It is the Ides of January of 2024. My name is George. This is my show, The George Show, on 710 KNUS. Iowa caucuses today. That may be the biggest political news out there, at least nationally. We have some local stuff here that has taken place within the last, 18, 24 hours or so with the Colorado GOP. We'll talk about that as well. But it is cold. It is Monday today. 2 degrees is what this ridiculous Denver 7 pictogram that James has saddled me with says. 2 degrees. That's the high. I looked outside. It looks to me like it's snowing. I can't be certain because I have the lights on in here, and that means I can't see much about what's going on outside, but it looks like there's a bunch of snow. Low of 15 degrees. I think those numbers are both freezing numbers. I've got to go back and look at some of my kids' science stuff, but I'm pretty sure that's below freezing. Tomorrow, we see a spike in temperatures of 30 degrees. We get all the way to 32 degrees. Wednesday, we're back up to 41. We goof around up and down through Friday. And then this weekend, 47 and 48. Here's why that's important. If you're like me and you spent, a couple mornings last week when it snowed on the radio, especially the way your house sits and how the sun hits it, you missed a golden opportunity to shovel off the snow. And so it may have, with repeated car use, turned into ice, and you are now stuck. Until the weather gets above 32 consistently, you are going to be trapped in this icy driveway hell. And that's where I'm at right now. So chance of flurries, not again until Thursday. But today, you just got to get through today. And it's MLK Day. That's a big day. We remember Martin Luther King Jr. and his impact on America for the positive with the civil rights movement, all the great things that he's done. There's even going to be, I can't believe they're still going to do it, the parade out there in Denver. I participated in, a bunch of those over the years. None since I've been out of office, only because I've ended up doing things like this where I can't actually be there. They do a special thing out in Aurora, out at the library out there. They have a giant statue of Martin Luther King. That's always a cool one. The mayor and everybody are out there. And then they'll do the big parade out in Denver. My goodness, it's going to be cold. I hope they have a hot chocolate or something, because that's a long walk as it is. Nice walk because, everyone's upbeat and, at least in the past, very unified. But now, of course, free zing. If you stop moving, I think you instantly turn to ice. It's like something out of, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe or something like that. I'm here remote today. Billy out till Wednesday. That means James, I imagine James got stuck with the job today, and G will get stuck with the job tomorrow. James, is that right? And
that is correct.
Yeah, sorry you drew the short straw on that one. Your kids, I presume, have the day off.
Yes, all of 27J has the day off.
And when you say 27J, that's a reference to some kind of a school district.
School district, yeah.
Yeah, which one?
It's Brighton Northeast.
Interesting. For this weekend, because you're a big football guy, your son's a big football player. Has he, by the way, settled on where he's going?
We're looking at, or he's been accepted to CSU. So I think that's where he's going to be going.
What's he want to do there?
Engineering.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
he's not as good as CU, of course, but
yeah, he's a smart one. Well, we're still waiting on CU. If it's CU, then that'll be the choice.
You think so? So if it's between CU and CSU, your son is going to go for the upgrade and go to CU.
That's his plan. He's always wanted to go to CU. So I got a picture of him in a CU jersey back when he was, 4 or 5 years old. And
that was not Dad's wish imposed on him. That was his wish.
We were at a thrift store and we found this jersey, and it's just a number 10 jersey, no name on the back or anything. But yeah, he's like, Dad, I want that. And then he's never stopped talking about going to CU.
Man, that's something. My boy, of course, is a CSU kid. He says he's going to head up this morning around 8 or 9 to head back to school. I think the break was good. I just don't feel like I got to do enough with him. The break was just too darn short. And when you're not, when you don't see your kid anymore, and James, you're not there yet. Is your son the oldest that you know of?
No. Funny. No, he's the youngest. He's the last one.
Oh, but
so yeah.
Oh,
other two.
no. So you guys are on the verge of just having each other to look at.
Yep, that's it.
Holy smokes, man. I hope you're ready for that.
I'm ready for that. I'm ready.
So for me, it's different. Trey is the second of four. So I still have two, which run around, which is great because you still feel like you're an active dad at the time. But Trey goes up today. I never get, there's so many things like when the break began where I'm like, oh, let's go see this movie. Or let's like even on I think Netflix has like Equalizer 3 on it with Denzel Washington. Well, I'm a big Denzel fan. And we'd say, hey, yeah, let's watch that. I was like, well, 3 weeks later, we didn't watch it at all. We got a chance to play some games, but I wanted to do another Catan round, with him and his brothers, and we didn't get a chance to do that. It just feels like the time slips away so dang quickly, and now he's going to drive up. I tried to get him to, hey, stick around till I'm off the radio. Maybe we can do brunch or a lunch, and he's like, Dad, the weather. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I get it. I understand you need to get up there, but holy smokes, it's the time just flies by. Did you, because you're a football family, James, get a chance to watch any of the NFL playoff games?
I watched the Chiefs win. That was unfortunate for, I don't know, I'm just not a Chiefs fan. Broncos
no, who
fan.
is?
Exactly.
I mean, what good human being is?
And then I watched the Dallas Cowboys lose, which oh my gosh, they were picked to go to the Super Bowl and win it, I believe.
Not by me, but
no,
yeah, by some. In fact, Graham, my youngest, had a bracket in which he had picked the Browns to go to the AFC Championship and Dallas to go to the NFC Championship. He's like, well, it's busted. I'm like, yeah, it's over. There's no rebounding from that. I wanted to see the Browns. You didn't watch the Browns game?
I didn't get a chance to, no.
I wanted them to go on just because of their history, which has been so dreadful, and the Joe Flacco story. You know what I mean? They start the season with the rapist from Houston Texans, and then he can't make it work. They go through another backup. Finally, they dust off Joe Flacco, who never really caught fire here, and the dude is playing lights out football. And I thought, oh, it'd be such a good story because I don't care about either of those teams. But the Cowboys won. Oh man, America's team got beaten like a baby harp seal, buddy. Yes, 27-0 to start is a tough thing to dig out of, and they couldn't do it.
No, they just didn't. They couldn't stop the offense. Their defense was
Jordan Love looked good, and
he did.
Jordan Love looked really good. I don't know what's going on with Dallas, and you would think that Mike McCarthy, who got fired from the Packers, would have his team chomping at the bit to blow the doors off the Packers, as some sort of a see what you gave up on kind of a thing. Nope. He just reminded Packers why he needed to move on from the Packers.
That's it.
Any chance you got to watch any of the other playoff games? I just picture you watching them with your son or something like that. I take for granted that you might have other things going on in your life.
Wrestling tournaments. Yeah. That got in the way. Arvada West. Yeah.
What big wrestling tournament? Where were you?
It was the Arvada West Invitational. Yeah, Ben took fifth.
How'd your boy do?
Oh, he took fifth. He wrestled well. Lost to Brighton.
What weight class?
165. Okay, so check this out, George. The number one kid in the 165 bracket from Pomona was in the bracket. Or in the state, sorry. Number one kid in the state in Ben's bracket. Number two kid in the state from Grandview in Ben's bracket. Number three kid from, or he dropped down from 175 from Brighton in Ben's bracket.
Oh, Ben's brutal.
Yeah. Ben's ranked number 10 in the state at 165. But that going up against Grandview and Pomona, that's just ridiculous. Those kids are just
Pomona. I lost sight of them when I was in high school back in the day. Arvada West was a dominant wrestling program, but Pomona always had good wrestlers as well. Have they consistently been that way, or are they now surging again?
They are top. Yeah, their team is ranked number one in the state. There's 14 weight brackets. I think they had 10 number one first place finishers at the Arvada West tournament.
That's
ridiculous. It was ridiculous. Yeah.
That's a lot. And 165 for people that don't do the wrestling thing and don't see this. And by the way, does your son have to cut weight to get 165? What's his walk around weight?
He cuts down about 4 pounds.
Okay, that's totally manageable.
Yeah.
When you look at the 165 wrestlers in high school, these guys are largely just muscles with hair on the top. You know what I mean? Like these guys are so strong and so thick. And some of them are not cutting 4 pounds. Some of them are cutting 10 pounds or more. And they're like, their walk around weight is somewhere between 175 and 180. I don't know how dangerous that is. My point is, holy smokes, 165. In my mind, 155, 165, maybe the most competitive weight classes in the state just because of how strong, big, and fast these guys are. I know some of the, and you may think differently, James, some of the lighter ones, those can be pretty cool. But when you hit that one, is 155 the one below 165?
157. Yep.
150. Yep. Just these guys are just so strong and so fast. And it's unbelievable. So the fact that your son is ranked 10th in the state, pretty impressive.
Yes.
Pretty impressive.
That was a big
already.
tournament too. That was a big tournament. So
yeah.
That
so what's next then? When does he qualify for state and then go on to the big is it out there at Pepsi Center, Ball Arena?
Yep, it'll be at the Pepsi Center. He's going to have a tough time qualifying for state. Pomona is in our region. Grandview is in our region. So number 1 and number 2. Brighton is in our region. You know, the kid that beat him this last weekend. And I think that's all the tops, but there's going to be 5 in his weight bracket that are ranked 1 through 7. So
dang, James, that's something, man. And then is he doing some sports at CU or CSU?
They don't know about him yet because we failed to get his name out there, and there was some politics at the school, so he didn't get a whole lot of playing time. But no, we're going to get our film together and get it to the CSU and see when open tryouts are and see if he can walk on.
Man, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool, James. Nice weekend there. For me, I ended up yesterday at a baby shower, and listen, folks, there's an interesting dynamic that exists between district attorneys and public defenders. And it's one that I don't think has always existed this way, but it has grown this way since I was a young baby DA back in, let's call it 94. I mean, somebody asked me the other day, I think Graham, like, hey, Dad, when did you first start doing trials? And I said, I did my first jury trial in July of 1994. And I thought, oh my God, that's going to be 30 freaking years ago here coming up this July. And since I've been there, the relationship between district attorneys and public defenders has been a challenging one. And it's not that they're all at the same level of toxicity, but there's something that exists in the public defender's office that you and I pay for through taxpayer money, where they, by design, recruit, train, breed probably a group of individuals who are Kool-Aid drinkers on the idea that the system is completely corrupt, that cops are always bastards and liars, that district attorneys will always cheat to win, and that injustice just reigns supreme in this process, and they alone are the ones that can stand between the evil and their clients. They will sleep like babies after having acquitted a serial rapist or a murderer or something like that, because they believe what they've done is to defend that person's constitutional rights, and that's more important than any other thing out there on the planet Earth. But that relationship, and it's not true for all of them, don't get me wrong. I've got people that I can hang out with, have a beer with, there's a small number who are public defenders, and certainly when they become former public defenders, they tend to mellow out a little bit more. But here's an example. When I was DA, I actually hired people to be prosecutors who had backgrounds where they might have interned at a public defender's office, or one who had worked for the ACLU. See, for me, the litmus test isn't what have you done and who have you worked for. It's what can you bring to the table, and can I get some assessment of whether or not you have a good sense of right and wrong and justice and all that other stuff. Not so for the public defender's office. The public defender's office, if you ever applied as a law student to intern at a DA's office, you are dead to them. It is poison to them. They would never, ever, never consider hiring someone who was a former district attorney. Yet I can tell you, I would hire a former public defender. In fact, John Kellner, my successor, he's hired a couple former public defenders who've gone on to be really strong prosecutors. The point here is that there is a complete breakdown in, it's not ideology, but in view of the criminal justice system and the world. So public defenders see prosecutors largely as just bad human beings. So this is my backdrop for what took place yesterday at this baby shower that I went to. Baby shower is for a woman who's pregnant, because I refuse to say pregnant person because I think that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Pregnant woman. She's a former public defender. She's married to a police officer. So you can imagine already the tension that creates, not for the police officer. Like, nobody cares on the law enforcement side that you date or marry or something, a former, but nobody cares about that. But in the public defender world, that's like, I don't know, that would be like someone who was Jewish marrying someone from Hamas. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's how they would view that. So she invites a bunch of people over. I'm over there. There's some public defenders over there, young former public defenders too, that are just recent former public defenders within the last few years. And I'm talking to a few people. I'm standing there with 3 former public defenders, and we're chit-chatting. I just take for granted, and this is hubris on my part, I take for granted that somebody in the criminal justice game in the metro area knows who I am. Not across the state. I don't feel like I'm famous or anything like that. I just, in the criminal justice game, like the cops that were there, like even the husband who was there expecting their first child, even he was like, oh, I know that guy. Who is that guy? I know that guy. I know that guy. And then when his wife told him, he was like, that's right. I know. So that's what I tell you. So I'm talking to these 3 former public defenders. We're chit-chatting it up, and I'm, hey, where did you go to law school? What are you doing now? That kind of thing. And this one I end up talking to, we'll leave her name out of it only because it was such a bizarre reaction. But she says, oh, I was in the PD's office out there in Arapahoe County. And I'm like, oh, really? I know Arapahoe County. I'm like, I know the DA. And she's like, oh, I could tell you all about both of the DAs I was PD under. And I thought that was like tongue in cheek, like, of course, because you're talking to one of them. But nope, she keeps going. And I said, well, when were you there? What years? And she goes, well, started in 2019 and I left in 2022. So that's like a cup of coffee, right? But I'm like, oh, I said, well, we had virtually no overlap. I mean, because the COVID hit and they kind of shut us down for a bit. And then I was gone in 21. And she goes, were you a DA out there in Arapahoe? I think she's screwing around. And I go, yep. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. And she goes, well, what's your name? Like, what's your full name? And I go, it's George Brauchler. And she looks at me, and the other people in this group are all looking at her. And she looks at me, she goes, no, you're not. I go, well, we could Google me. I'm pretty sure I'm out there somewhere. And she looks, and when you look up the word stupefy, it was that reaction. I swear to you, I've never seen anything like it. She stood there blinking and couldn't make words. She goes, and it was this horrified look at who she realizes she was talking to. The other 2 former public defenders are looking at her. They're looking at each other. They're looking at me. And I'm like, yeah, that's me. And she just stands there batting her eyes, not making words. She must have been very effective in the courtroom, by the way. And I end up continuing to talk with these other 2 who are just completely cordial. And this woman just drifts away. I mean, like, literally starts backing up and then just walks away across the room. And I'm like, what in the world was that? And the 2 other former public defenders were like, I don't know what just happened there, but that was super bizarre. I'm like, yeah, I don't know either. I don't recognize this person. We clearly never had a case together. Like, it was such a bizarre thing, but it reminded me about the Kool-Aid drinking nature of the public defender's office. And it was bonkers, man. It was something I laughed about. Graham was with me at this baby shower. And even Graham was like, Dad, do you think she doesn't like you? I'm like, I feel like that was displayed, like this was, she did not like me. And Graham was like, what's that about? I tell him the story. He's like, that just seems really weird. And anyway, long story, but it was an event that took place during an otherwise completely lovely baby shower for this young couple who managed to find love, despite the fact that one of them was a former public defender and the other was a police officer. Lovely couple. They're good. He's giant. She's like short. She's like 5'2", dude's 6'4". And so on this whole guess the baby stuff that they had you do, I'm like, boy, I really don't know. This could go really wrong in a lot of ways. Like the baby could come out as big as mom. I mean, that's how tall this guy is. So it was interesting to try to make the guesses. Alexa, of course, texting in, she probably thought you were Stephen Tubbs, except I didn't smell like alcohol. No, I'm kidding. I'm joking. Our friend Stefan, of course, was in the studio last week, brought in Richard Holtorf, who we had a lovely conversation with. We'll continue those conversations, by the way, with the CD4 folks as they develop. The big news here, and Joan is, God bless you, Joan. Joan talks about the fact that, hey, will Trump break 60%? I don't know. I think most of the talk has been we break 50%. Jones says, most definitely. You keep pushing Hallie, whoever that is, because of this weather. It will be an enthusiasm vote, and say what you will, Trump supporters will show. What does that mean, say what I will? I think Trump supporters will show. I think he's going to run away with the Iowa caucuses. I mean, I've never said anything other than that. And I'm not pushing Haley. I'm pushing a conversation about, is this it? Is it over? Is this all the Republican Party has devolved into now in the era of Trump, that we shouldn't even have conversations about other candidates? It's just a foregone conclusion. We're wasting our time. We should just let this guy have the field free and clear as if he were an incumbent. I don't agree with that. I don't think that's America, and I don't think that's the Republican Party, but what do I know about it? Other texts, hopefully the people will be bundled up. You can get frostbite in 20 minutes in these temps. I bet you that's true. I bet you that's true. A couple other things I've been looking into that I want to talk about as we get through the show is this stuff with Fani Willis. I mean, listen, I already believed that she was so hyper partisan that her prosecution of Donald Trump would be perceived as flawed and biased and all that other stuff, independent of the merits of it. And that's what happens when you're on the campaign trail and you start making promises and comments and stuff like that about people you might ultimately prosecute. But and it's not just the Dems. This is a Republican thing as well. But that's just what happens in the further politicization of prosecution. Well, as you know, last week there was a filing in court made by one of the Trump co-defendants making allegations that Fani Willis was in a romantic relationship with a guy that she had tapped as a special prosecutor on a case. And folks, if you haven't looked into this thing, holy smokes. Now, we're going to have a conversation about it here. We will when we come back from a break. But there's something going on. But I want to separate for you the idea that because what is taking place appears to be really objectionable and horrible optics, that means that substantively the prosecution therefore must be flawed and thrown out. There is a disconnect there for me, right? Like there can be a completely, let's take it away from Trump. Let's say it's Fani Willis, guy murders someone and they have it on video that he murdered someone. And the same Fani Willis hires the same guy who she's alleged to have a romantic relationship with to prosecute it and pays him a crap ton of money to do it. All of those optics still look horrible. But do we say, well, better dismiss the case against the murderer? No, you wouldn't. You would say maybe Fani Willis shouldn't be the district attorney. Maybe the alleged boyfriend or romantic interest shouldn't be the special prosecutor on the case. That's all fair. That's all legitimate. But you don't reward the defendant for the misdeeds, the missteps of the prosecutor in this particular area, unless it manifests itself in some constitutional violation. I just don't think you reward the defendant with that. Now, we're not talking about murder. We're not talking about it being on videotape, but I use that as an example to highlight for you that it is difficult for me to get lathered up the way so many Trumpsters do with this idea that, oh my gosh, she's a horrible DA. She's completely politically motivated. She's hired her boyfriend. She's paid a bunch of money. and therefore the case should be dismissed. No. Now, I'm not there yet. Now, you can get me there, but not with what I've seen so far. But this stuff is crazy that's coming out about this. There may be a very innocent explanation. It's hard to imagine what that will be, given the relationships here that have developed. I mean, some of these articles, folks, and you can Google this stuff. You can go find it out there on Politico. I mean, it's a left-leaning, but they do a deep dive on this stuff. Politico has some stuff out there. There's some other, I think it was the New Yorker, the Wall Street Journal has articles on this. I mean, there's a lot going on, folks, with this prosecution, and it is, none of it is good. And so I'm going to give you the bottom line up front. Fani Willis should recuse herself, and the special prosecutor, she should fire him immediately. She should recuse herself and ask to have either the Attorney General's office, which in the state of Colorado you'd never do because they don't know what they're doing, or get a different prosecutor's office to handle this thing, because the issues are too important. And you need somebody who is separated from the political stink that wafts over any of these prosecutions by partisan DAs who campaigned on their zeal for wanting to get Trump. You got to separate them from this. So we'll talk about this and some of the things that are out there. This is some bonkers stuff. I've never seen anything quite like this. We'll talk about that as well. And, when we get to it, we're going to talk about the state of Colorado, because state GOP did something yesterday unprecedented. I've never seen anything like it before. I never thought we'd see it. I advocated against it. I think it's bad politics, but here we are, and we'll talk about that as well. Hey, our phone number for conversations on this or any other topic, of course, 303-696-1971. That's 303-696-1971. We're going to stick around for a break. We'll come back. We'll keep it going. It's George Brauchler on The George Show. You're listening to 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. A couple texts coming in. I want to set the stage for this next conversation here because it's a big one. As you know, Donald Trump is facing 4 separate prosecutions across the United States. 2 of them are federal. They are led by Jack Smith. He is a prosecutor handpicked and plucked from, I think, The Hague or something like that, and brought over, and he's got 2 cases. One is out of Mar-a-Lago. It's kind of broadly known as the documents case for reasons I don't want to go through all the details on. I will tell you, I think it is far and away the strongest case against President Trump, and it poses the greatest risk to him. The other federal case that he has is in Washington, D.C., and it's very much tied to a prosecution, in essence, of January the 6th. And I have always said I thought that one was overly ambitious. He is too zealous on it, and I thought it was too much of a reach. That one feels to me to be incredibly political. The very first prosecution initiated against President Trump was by Alvin Bragg. He is the elected district attorney in Manhattan, and that prosecution is straight up junk because this is a guy who used misdemeanor laws that the time had run out and twisted them, origamied them, and tortured them into felonies by making allegations that I just don't think they're going to be able to prove in court. And this was by a guy who campaigned on nobody's prosecuted Trump more than I have. I'm aggressive on Trump. I will get Trump, all this other stuff. That guy's unfit to prosecute the president when he's campaigned on it. That's just not how the system is supposed to work. It corrupts the system because it poisons the idea that this is a pursuit of justice and not a pursuit of political ends. Fani Willis is the elected district attorney in Fulton County, Georgia. Some wingnuts out there have said, oh, she's so brave for bringing these charges. We're going to have to redefine bravery because Fani Willis also a hyper-partisan, and she gets to be. In this modern era, you get to be a hyper-partisan. That's the path to getting elected to be a district attorney or attorney general in states everywhere. Colorado's not immune from that either. But Fani Willis launched a broad prosecution of the president and a whole bunch of his compatriots and colleagues, some of whom have now copped deals. They've taken plea bargains in order to be cooperative in prosecution against others, including Donald Trump. Now, folks might say, oh, no, she has such a righteous case and the law. Listen, Georgia has a RICO law, which is like what you would prosecute the mob with, that is extremely broad. It is much broader than even what we have here in Colorado. It allows for almost anything to be something called a predicate offense for a larger organized crime allegation. And that's what she's done here. Is what she's doing outside the confines of Georgia law? I don't think so. And I say that because she used the same tool to go after like the teachers. I can't remember if it was the teachers union or the teachers, but she did. That doesn't make it right, simply because it fits within the confines of a law that is overly broad and overly aggressive, the tortured use of it to achieve a political purpose. And I believe for her, this is a political purpose. She's made that clear. I think that's problematic. So could Donald Trump and these others have been in violation of Georgia law? Maybe, yeah, could be. Does her motives for prosecuting matter? They do. They do matter. I don't think they're dispositive of what to do with any given case, but I do think they matter. And so that conversation has been ongoing. But lo and behold, now there's another wrinkle to this case out of Georgia in a case called Georgia versus Michael Roman. The attorney for Michael Roman filed a motion to dismiss the grand jury indictment. I'm just going to read you the caption on the pleading. Defendant Michael Roman's motion to dismiss grand jury indictment as fatally defective and motion to disqualify the district attorney, her office, and the special prosecutor from further prosecuting this matter. And here's why. This guy that Fani Willis has hired is named Nathan Wade. Now, Nathan Wade, and you should look this up. Never just take me at my word for what's out there, okay? I'll always do the best I can, give you the source for this stuff, because I know many of you are at home or you're driving, working your phone as I do or something, and you want to look this stuff up. He's part of a law firm. It looks like, I don't know, two dudes, Nathan Wade and Christopher Campbell. The law firm is called Wade and Campbell. If you go to that website, you can see that within the first few words of his bio, he describes himself as a former prosecutor. Really, I don't know much more other than that he claims to have been a former prosecutor, but dude is a divorce lawyer and a civil lawyer. And outside of handling the domestic violence misdemeanors that flow out of some of the divorce cases, it appears that he has spent the last chunk of his career, huge chunk, not doing any sort of criminal prosecution at all. Now, he had been, maybe he still is, an associate municipal court judge in Cobb County. Now, municipal tells me city, right? That's what municipal means. City judges handle teeny tiny cases that have any criminal impact at all, perhaps misdemeanors. And that's a maybe misdemeanors, but most definitely traffic. So this is a traffic and low-level misdemeanor judge who Fani Willis weirdly reached and plucked out of his existence to be a special prosecutor charged with prosecuting what is undeniably the highest profile case Fani Willis has ever touched or sniffed, let alone brought in her name, but also a case that has significant ramifications for an upcoming presidential election. So you would think that she would have picked somebody with care. One of the things I don't understand is why she had to get a special prosecutor at all, and I'm trying to look into that. Why couldn't she just tap one of her seasoned and veteran own prosecutors, or if she needed somebody that was for some reason unrelated to her office, why couldn't she reach out to another DA's office in Georgia? Turns out they have a lot of violent crime in and around Atlanta and some of the other bigger parts of Georgia. They have prosecutors that know what they're doing. In fact, some years ago, not a long time ago, maybe 6-7 years ago, I actually came out to the Georgia, I think it was in Jekyll Island. I think that was it. The Georgia State Prosecutors Association annual conference to give a presentation on the Aurora Theater case. And those folks know what they're doing. I mean, you can just tell from the questions, some of the bios. I talked to some folks afterwards. These are folks that know what they're doing when it comes to prosecution. It just bewilders me that she would pluck a divorce and civil lawyer who does municipal judge traffic cases to be in charge of the biggest prosecution she's ever brought. That's kind of a big deal. It's interesting. It's certainly interesting, but it gets even more interesting, and here's why. The day after Fani Willis plucks this dude out of nowhere to become a special prosecutor, he files for divorce against his wife, or from his wife, of I think they were married 28 years or something like that. Listen to this statistic or this fact, and this is from some little rag called the Wall Street Journal. There exists no record that Wade, a lawyer in private practice hired to lead the Trump case, has ever handled a felony trial in Georgia. What? What? That's crazy, right? Doesn't that make you wonder, what did Fani Willis see in this guy that made her think this is the guy? Never handled a felony case before. He's a wizard on the bench with things like speeding and careless driving. This is the guy I need to lead this very complicated, high-profile, aggressive prosecution of the former president of the United States. What? I mean, listen, voters have done this all the time. We see people running for district attorney now, and we will again, by the way, in this upcoming year, in November, we'll see people running for district attorney who have been prosecutors for a cup of coffee, if at all, who have handled not a single murder. And you'll see metro area candidates for DA who will say, I'd like to run the office. I'd like to make decisions about murders, even though I've never been entrusted to handle one. So, but that's different too, because that's the voters making that decision. That's the voters shooting off their foot, probably over something partisan, right? But here, you have the elected DA handpicking a dude, and it makes you wonder why this guy. And isn't it weird that he files for divorce the day after getting what turns out to be a pretty lucrative contract? Because since 2021, so we're talking less than 3 years now. Since 2021, dude has billed the Fulton County DA's office somewhere around $700,000 for his job as special prosecutor. $700,000. You can do the math on that, folks. What in the hell does Fani Willis make? My guess is she's made less money over that same period of time than Nathan Wade. So what is it? Why pick this guy? Well, enter the attorney for Michael Roman to say, we have evidence that this guy and Fani Willis are having a romantic relationship. That's a huge problem. That is a bit of a problem. I'm not sure it's an ethical issue in terms of the prosecution, and here's why I say that. We'll get there. What if we had a husband and a wife team in a DA's office that worked together? It'd be tough to supervise. I'm just saying it would be tough to supervise. But what happens if the wife's the elected DA and her husband is assigned to prosecute some case? You wouldn't say, oh, no, that's corrupt purpose there. There's a corrupt. That's not the problem with that. So it's not just the romantic piece. It's that she picked some dude who doesn't have the chops or the experience to do it. You know, the last time we saw something like this, and in no way am I saying there was a romantic involvement. How about AG Phil Weiser hiring two dudes from giant civil law firms, Chicago and LA, who've never been a federal prosecutor, who appear to have never handled a state murder charge ever, and hired them to come prosecute Elijah McClain. This is a growing trend. It's just very interesting. I want to have this conversation with you because I want to know, what does this mean? Do you think that the charges should be dismissed because of that? And if so, why? 303-696-1971. Let's cut away for a break. We'll come back. We'll keep the conversation going, and then we'll hit the 7 o'clock hour, and we'll hit our stride. It's George Brauchler on The George Show, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Only a couple minutes left. I want to get to many of the texts that are coming here. I want to keep those going on. What should happen in the prosecution of Donald Trump down there in Fulton County, Georgia, as a result of these allegations, should they be proven true? There's some real wackiness going on down in Atlanta. I mean, just from the way it's being reported, not from conservative publications, by the way, bit of a gong show in some decision-making there. Listen, something else somebody turned me on to that I did not realize, and we'll wrap up the first hour with this. There's a woman named Madison Marsh. She's a second lieutenant in the Air Force. She graduated this past May from the Air Force Academy down in El Paso County. She's Miss Colorado, but now she's Miss America. Very first active duty Air Force officer to ever win that title. It's incredible. She's now at, by the way, degree in physics for those of you who are like, oh, pretty face. No, it's the brain. Physics. And now she's studying some sort of public policy at some dumpy school called the Harvard Kennedy School of something or other. But oh my goodness, she's a 2-time National Astronaut Scholar, 8-time Dean's List at the Air Force Academy, NASA intern for gamma ray burst research, National Roads finalist, certified private pilot, black belt in taekwondo for those of you who thought about getting handsy. Sweet goodness. It says awarded pilot as official Air Force career, superstar out of the Air Force Academy in Colorado. Miss Colorado, now Miss America, Madison Marsh. Thanks for turning me on to that story. Hey, James, by the way, as we continue to work our way through this, you've got to talk me down in the last 20 seconds and let me know where we're at. That's just so I don't end up getting cut off. Here's where we're going to go when we come back. I'm going to try to respond to these texts that have been coming in here, but I want to know what should happen here. Should Donald Trump be the beneficiary of the shenanigans that appear to have been taking place between Fani Willis and this lightly, if at all, experienced special prosecutor assigned to prosecute Donald Trump and, oh, by the way, collect over $700,000 in less than 3 years of prosecuting? That would be incredibly interesting to have that conversation. James, how much time we got? 20 seconds. Thanks, man. Hey, our number, and I want to have the talk with you, 303-696-1971, 303-696-1971. It's George Brauchler. You're listening to 710 KNUS. Welcome back to hour number 2 of 4 right here on The George Show. It is a chilly, chilly Monday, high of 2 degrees, a low of -1 billion or something as far as I can tell, as the sun is starting to come up and light up the outside of the house here. It's snowing, folks. There is snow coming down here, and it looks like a fog of sorts has set in. I can see a block over, maybe a little bit more than that, but not much more than that. If you're going to be out there on the roads, be super careful. Do your best not to text and drive, which used to be a crime in the state of Colorado. It is not anymore, only if it distracts you to the point of being careless and posing a risk. So how that shows up is you get into a car accident, they find out you were on your phone. That's when you get lit up for that right there. But be very, very safe as you drive around. This just got a text from a buddy about our good friend Fani Willis. And this is what we're talking about, and we've had a bunch of texts on it, and I want to keep that going, and I'll get to the text, I promise. I really do want to have the conversation with you, because I don't think this is as, despite her claims of racism, as black and white as some would claim it to be. And so here's where we're at. Of the 4 prosecutions currently levied against the president, and I think folks ought to appreciate this too. This is just a little bit of an aside. If President Trump gets reelected, and I think the odds are he's going to be reelected, okay? He cannot do a damn thing about the prosecutions in Manhattan or Atlanta. Not a thing. He can't make them go away. There isn't going to be some supremacy clause invocation that makes the only ones he could end are the Jack Smith prosecutions. And man, that would seem awfully corrupt. Doesn't matter what you think about those prosecutions. If the president decides to stop the prosecution against himself, if he makes that decision, that's a problem. I don't know how you resolve it. I don't know if you suspend it till you're out of office. I don't know. But man, that just wouldn't look right. I mean, that looks king-like, doesn't it? But the prosecution in Manhattan, which is garbage, it is garbage. He can't do anything about. The one in Atlanta, Georgia, which I think arguably fits the law, because Georgia has such a super broad RICO-like law, right? Broader than the feds, broader than Colorado's. I think it might fit the conduct that's alleged. Doesn't mean it's appropriate. Doesn't mean it should go forward. Doesn't mean it isn't politically motivated. But now we're not talking politics, because what's happened is there's a co-defendant out there who has an attorney who got super creative and super aggressive and asked to have a case dismissed against his client, not the president, but dismissed against his client. Oh, goodness gracious. Because it turns out there are allegations of a relationship that existed between Fani Willis and the special prosecutor that she hired. And so the problem that creates, of course, is some sort of conflict of interest. That's what they're going to claim. I don't know. So here are the facts. Fani Willis is the elected DA in Atlanta. It's Fulton County in Atlanta, Georgia. Tons of prosecutors, tons of resources, tons of crime. She brings these super aggressive indictments against Trump. And how many was it? Like 13 others or something like that? It could have been more. And she appoints, if you will, as a special prosecutor, a guy named Nathan Wade. Now, Nathan Wade is an attorney in Georgia. He's been an attorney for a super long time. But what he hasn't been is a prosecutor. In fact, according to the pleadings by the attorney for the co-defendant here, and that co-defendant is named Michael Roman. Dude is never, ever, there's no record of this guy ever handling a felony case, let alone the largest prosecution, perhaps, at least in terms of publicity and impact on America, in the history of Atlanta, Georgia, and certainly for Fani Willis. And she taps this guy, who's a divorce lawyer at best. He's been sounds like a part-time associate municipal, that means city judge, handling traffic matters, maybe low-level misdemeanors. And she taps this guy, and for huge bucks. Like apparently he's made like somewhere around, or been paid like $700,000 since 2021 when he got appointed. And it was towards the end of the year, if you'll recall. The day after he's appointed by Fani Willis, he files for divorce from his wife of 28 years, 25 years, something like that. And now this Michael Roman has alleged through his attorney that they're knocking boots, that there's a romantic relationship there. And of course, in the Trump universe, this is proof that the prosecution is corrupt and it must go away. And I want to have that conversation with you. I want to hear from you at 303-696-1971 if that's what you think. And if so, why? Now, there's some folks on here that have texted in, and some of it's pretty insightful. Joan says she was on the line and disconnected. Hey, James, I don't know. Look for a call from Joan. She said she was on, but got disconnected. We can fix that. Here's one. Thank you for pronouncing her name correctly. What does her sex life have to do with the facts of the case against Trump? Looks bad, but facts are facts. Pretty insightful, in my opinion. But here's where we're at. If you are a big fan of the defendant in this case, that defendant being the potential, maybe likely future president of the United States, then any reason you can find to get a case dismissed is a good reason. I'm not there. I'm not there. I think her motives are corrupt, not because she has a romantic relationship with the special prosecutor, but because I think she brought this for political reasons. I believe that. And there are some fools out there who are like, oh, brave, funny. Well, what's brave about? What's brave about being in a Democrat stronghold and prosecuting the Republican president? Well, what's brave about that? That's like expected, right? But she has this thing hanging out there that optically I think is horrific. But does that mean that Trump did not commit the acts he's alleged to have committed by the grand jury? He was indicted by grand jurors. So does that mean that he should get a walk on that, a pass on that? 303-696-1971, more texts. Could the real RICO defendant be Fani at all? Yeah, that's a clever question, but I don't know that makes it RICO. I think her judgment here is entirely suspect. I think the romantic thing has to be ferreted out. I think that is a horrible, horrible look, but not from the standpoint of should this dude be allowed to prosecute Trump? In fact, if you're Donald Trump, you should be like, no, keep this clown show on because this guy has never handled a felony case. Yes, please keep him as the prosecutor. Don't give me someone that knows what they're doing. Meanwhile, there's a handful of people, including Colorado's Jenna Ellis, that have pleaded guilty and taken deals. I do not at all think that is a reflection of this guy's competence as a prosecutor. What is likely a reflection of is they got attorneys that sat down and said, agree or disagree, politics or not, these facts add up to these convictions, and this is what happens if you go to court. That's what a defense attorney is supposed to do. Interesting. More text. This is the same Fulton County that a clerk filed the indictment on Trump before the grand jury voted. Yeah, I don't know anything about that. I don't know that that's accurate or not. Here's one text. They're banging. Yep, that's probably true. I think that's a synonym for something else. George, why are these prosecutors, this is from our friend Gino, why are these prosecutors, Letitia James and Fani Willis, getting away with these prosecutions amounting to prosecutorial misconduct? Are there no ethics violations? This opinion is not based on being for or against Trump. These individuals should either be fired or recalled. The last statement we can talk about, and we'll get there. But what's the prosecutorial misconduct? That's a heavy term to lay against a prosecutor. Public defenders do it all the time, especially in appellate work. They do it all the time when they lose. And every once in a while, the Court of Appeals says that they're right. But what is prosecutorial misconduct about this? I mean, let's just, again, I want to use a very clear example. Let's say they have it's a Donald Trump, and they have him dead to rights, forgive the pun, on a murder on video. And so everyone would say, well, Most normal people would say absolutely should be prosecuted. Some of his supporters would say, well, wait a minute, who did he kill and why did he kill him? I mean, like, that's the important part. But I'd say most people would say, yeah, dude's got to be prosecuted for that. Let's plug Fani Willis into this and say she's politically motivated. She's hyper partisan. She had made comments in the past about holding Trump accountable. Does the fact that she harbors that in her heart mean that Donald Trump shouldn't be prosecuted? What's the name? Big James. We'll get to Roger in just in 1 second, I promise. Does that mean that he should not be prosecuted, or does it just mean she shouldn't be the prosecutor? Because those are two very different questions. 303-696-1971. Roger from Centennial, you're on 710, man. I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were hanging on there. That's my fault.
No, that's all right. This might be a silly question, but my question is, the former president is facing about 91 felony charges across different districts in the country. Why hasn't anyone, I'll just say it, why has he not been taken into custody, into custodial arrest? What's the legal reason?
Tons of them. In fact, the presumption is when you're accused of just about every crime, you're presumed to be bond eligible. In fact, here in the state of Colorado, the Supreme Court just came back and said, well, you can't deny someone bond simply because there's proof evident presumption great that they committed first-degree murder. So there's a bond eligibility baked into the Constitution, into the 8th Amendment as well, that there shouldn't be excessive bail or bond or all this other stuff. So he's permitted to be accused of crimes and still remain free under the conditions imposed by a court. Those conditions might be a PR bond, personal recognizance bond on his own signature. It might be having to post money, but there's no requirement that he be held in custody.
And do we know what bond amounts he's remained outside of custody?
I don't know, but my presumption is, given his circumstances, Roger, why would you require more than a personal recognizance bond? Like, where could this guy go? First off, he's running for president, so it doesn't seem likely he's going to flee the country. But where could this guy go on the planet Earth that we couldn't go get him if we wanted him?
Yeah, I understand that. They certainly try and make him sound like he's one of the worst criminals, since they like to use Adolf Hitler and some others, but
and that's completely wrong. The other thing is, they want us to get caught up in the number of charges, as if the number of charges means something. It doesn't. 91 felonies, who cares? It could be 9 billion felonies. They're mere allegations, and what's more important are, what are the facts that they're alleging amount to these crimes, and what's the gist of the crime? And so for folks that are like, well, he held on to government papers when he was obligated not to do so. That's the Mar-a-Lago case. Is that a crime? 100% it's a crime. Is that the kind of crime you lock some dude up? No. If you're a military officer, you might get locked up, but for sure you'd get prosecuted and lose your career and your pension. That part's true. But do you lock up a guy who's running for president because of the papers thing? I don't think so. The efforts here in Atlanta, Georgia, do you think, Roger, that the case should be dismissed because of what is this mounting, I'm going to say evidence, but these allegations against Fani Willis that she's romantically involved with the special prosecutor she hired to get Trump?
It definitely has a bad look about it, but I don't know the answer to that question.
Well, what do you think?
Last quick question.
Yeah, what do you feel like, though? Do you feel like, yep, I want to see him continue to be prosecuted, or I don't?
If the law dictates that he should continue to be prosecuted, I guess I'd like to see him continue to be prosecuted.
And what's your last question, Roger? Thank you.
My last question is he at risk of custody upon successful prosecution of any of these cases?
Yeah, if he's convicted, it's a different analysis a bit, right? Because now this guy has the means to disappear himself anywhere on the planet that he wants. I still don't think he could ever remain hidden. I mean, maybe he hangs out with his buddy Putin or something like that, or Kim Jong-un. But I think the risk changes because now the president is looked at as somebody who's convicted of a felony and is facing sentencing, does he pose a greater risk to not come back to court for that sentencing? I still think the risk is really low given the fact that he's pursuing the presidency. But you're right to ask the question. It does change things. I still don't think he goes into custody even if he's convicted. None of these are violent crimes.
Sure. Thanks for taking my call.
Hey, Roger. Thanks. I appreciate it. Roger's line is open, 303-696-1971. Joan, is Joan on, James? Joan, you didn't call back. I get it. It's probably out of fear. No, I'm kidding. Joan's probably got a million things going on right now. Here's some more. Here's some more of the texts. Joan says, not calling back in. Too cold and a waste of my 1 week phone call. Thank you for that. Another one, because he's a good-looking dude that she could vacate with. That's why she hired this guy. Yeah, he's a good-looking dude. That's probably true. Here's another one. Okay, George. This is from Eric. Okay, George, this is what I wrote. Again, all capitalized words, which is just insane. In fact, I promised I wouldn't read them if they were all capitalized. I got to be true to my word, Eric. I just won't do it. 303-696-1971 is the phone number. Fani Willis had an opportunity to address these allegations yesterday. And that's kind of a big deal because normally you wouldn't expect a prosecutor to jump in and talk about these things. But this is a weird one because there's an allegation of an improper romantic relationship. So as you can imagine, Fani Willis, who has the opportunity to address this, does so. And she limits her comments to, no, I didn't have a romantic relationship. No, she doesn't do that either. In fact, instead, she throws out the race card and says that, and says, here's a quote. She's talking to the Big Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Atlanta. This is yesterday. She read a letter that she had written, which is weird, by the way, because you would think a prosecutor could just stand there and talk without having to read things. But what do I know? Here's the quote. Wait a minute, God. You did not tell me as a woman of color it would not matter what I did. My motive, my talent, my ability, and my character would be constantly attacked. Oh, Lord, they're going to be mad when they call us out on this nonsense. She went on to criticize those who's accused her of wrongdoing. Quote, isn't it them who are playing the race card when they only question one? Isn't it them playing the race card when they constantly think I need someone from some other jurisdiction in some other state to tell me how to do a job I've been doing for almost 30 years? What? If you are driving around out there or sitting in your home and you think that the criticism of her hiring a guy who probably isn't qualified to handle a burglary case, let alone the largest felony prosecution, perhaps in the history of Atlanta, just based on the high-profile nature and the potential impact on America. If you think that has anything to do with race, please call in and explain to me how that's true. 303-696-1971. I haven't seen a single text that has alleged that. Just Fani Willis. Just those on the left who find it convenient for purposes of defending this conduct to say, well, they're saying it because she's a black woman. If it was a white guy prosecuting Joe Biden and a white guy hired some attractive woman who had no prosecution experience to speak of and paid her $700,000 over less than 3 years, almost just about 2 years, to handle a case against Joe Biden, are you telling me that the criticism of his decisions would be because he was a white guy? Nope, not at all. And they're not true here either. In fact, this is weak and lame and knee-jerk nonsense from the left. If you can play a race or gender card, you do. Now, am I telling you that there's no racism out there? No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying there isn't any misogyny out there. I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying for things like this, to have the fallback be, I'm being attacked because I'm a woman of color. How weak, how disgusting to throw that out. You're being criticized because you have yet to explain why you hired some dude who is a traffic judge and a divorce lawyer to handle this case. When I criticized Phil Weiser, and I will continue to criticize Phil Weiser for hiring two guys, one from Chicago, one from LA, neither of whom are licensed to practice in the state of Colorado, neither of whom have ever been local prosecutors, neither of whom have ever prosecuted a murder case, for them to be brought on board by the Attorney General to prosecute the highest profile criminal cases he's ever heard of, is my guess. Is that criticism because Phil's a white guy or a Jew? Nope. It's because it's a crappy decision. Is that criticism? Because one of those partners in those firms, the guy from LA, is African American. Was that criticism because he was black? Because the other dude from Chicago was white. This nonsense has to stop. We have to be able to have conversations about things that take place in the public sphere without fear of these wingnuts on the left and their media lackeys running to the defense of them based on demographics. What utter garbage. Fani Willis should be investigated for these decisions. I don't think Fani Willis should remain the prosecutor in charge of these prosecutions, and I think the special prosecutor she hired should be terminated immediately. The funds he's claimed should be audited. We should get to see the contract that was generated. And by we, I don't mean America, because this is a local matter. I think Georgians should be able to see that. But that's a far different question and answer than whether or not Donald Trump should continue to be prosecuted for the allegations that are contained in the indictment from that grand jury. I don't think the prosecution is legit because I think that Georgia law was intended for something else, some other conduct, but it looks like it fits. And when it's an aggressive, nuanced, new origamied prosecution, I do think the emphasis then has to shift to why is she doing it? And if it was a Republican district attorney, first off, you know that the MAGA crowd would still call for their heads. They'd call them a rhino or something. But it would be a different analysis for me. But for someone who campaigned on getting some other person or entity in their run for district attorney or attorney general, you ought to be precluded from handling any of those cases. Precluded. That includes when Phil says, I'm going to go out there and prosecute all the opioid makers when he was running for attorney general. That's the comments of someone who doesn't know what they're doing. That's the comments of someone who wants to politicize prosecution. Well, that's what Fani Willis did. That's what Alvin Bragg did. And while that is a separate issue from whether or not those cases are legit, it becomes an optics issue that makes us question whether or not we can get a just outcome from these cases. And when it comes to a guy who was the president of the United States, who, by the way, appears to stand a pretty damn good chance of becoming the president again, all of a sudden you're talking about blowing up the credibility of the criminal justice system. And that cannot be allowed to happen. When that happens, and my God, we are precariously close, pay close attention to who gets assigned as U.S. attorneys by this president and then the next president. If Trump wins, look at who he appoints to be U.S. attorneys. Are these partisan bend-the-knee hacks who happen to have law licenses? Or are they people with experience in criminal prosecution? That will tell you a ton. Look at who runs for district attorney, not just here, but across the country. Look at who George Soros backs and look at who he opposes. This politicization of prosecution and criminal justice, where we start putting lightly experienced people in charge of major prosecutions and major offices, why would anybody trust the system anymore? And you know where it's going to show up? In jury trials. Because you and I, not me so much, but you are going to be a juror on a future case. And if you sit in that box and think this person is a partisan hack, the person that runs this office, are bad guys going to get away with crimes? Might good people be convicted of things they didn't do? I worry. 303-696-1971. What are your thoughts on all this stuff? You got to let me know. Give me a call on this. Here's Joan texting, and Joan's in rare form today. Rant. Yeah, it's a bit of a rant, and it's one that hits close to home. Because as someone who has spent now close to 30 years in the criminal justice system one way or the other, I am horrified at what it's becoming. Horrified. And it's not just a Democrat issue. It is not just a Democrat issue. We can talk about that too. When the wingnuts on the right say, hey, once Trump gets into office, we're going to gin up the DOJ to go after the press and go after our enemies. Nope, that makes you unfit to fill those positions. Prosecution should never, ever, never be about political revenge. Ever, never about political revenge. And that's why we're so disgusted with some of the prosecutions against President Trump. It has less to do with whether or not he committed the crimes he's accused of than the idea that the people are out there trying to get him are doing so for political reasons. 303-696-1971. That's the number. Still a ton of texts coming in. Give us a call. Let's have this conversation. Talk me off the ledge here if you can. It's George Brauchler on The George Show, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS, our phone number 303-696-1971, talking about the prosecution of Donald Trump in Fulton County, Georgia by Fani Willis, who is alleged to have had a romantic or is having a romantic relationship, which she denies, with the special prosecutor that she has assigned to this particular case. Guy's name is Nathan Wade. Has virtually no experience in handling cases of this kind, has apparently never handled a felony case in the state of Georgia. It's very reminiscent of what Weiser did out here on the McLean case with the prosecution of the initial two officers, Rodema and Rosenblatt. Fascinating what's going on here. But the question is, does this mean that the case is meritless and it shouldn't be prosecuted, or are we merely talking about a need to replace the decision makers, the prosecutors? Let's go right to the phone lines. It's Joe from Arvada. You're on 710 KNUS. Joe, how are you?
Good morning, George. I've said it before. The DOJ and state courts are loaded with, I can't think of anything better, kangaroos. It's a kangaroo court. Not only that, the kangaroos are now proliferating.
Well, what's the limit to what is every local prosecution or local prosecutor part of a kangaroo court? Is it the entire system that's corrupt, or just the part that's turned against Donald Trump?
That actually brings up my
an answer, hopefully.
Proposed case. George Brauchler brings the case.
That's me.
In the state of Colorado against, let's say, the governor.
Yep.
And then it's found out that George Brauchler hired a good-looking investigator or a court participant that was being hired for $600,000. And then you did an elope to, I don't know, someplace in the Caribbean and spent all the money together doing the hootie-doo.
Hootie-doo.
And then you come back. And then when somebody finds out about it, you go to church and say, it's because we're white. We did it because, and nobody else would even notice, but we're white.
Yep. And right. Keep going. Get us to the point, though. Let's say that happens. Now what? Does that mean the case against Jared Polis should be dismissed?
Well, here's the thing. Why was the case brought in the first place? Oh, because you advertised as you were going for prosecutor that you were going to bring the case against Jared Polis. And then you got all the money from the office to bring the case. You spent it on the on the other kangaroo.
But Joe, let's not make it so I don't know, speculative about these things going on with Fani Willis. Let's just get to the point where, let's say everything you just said is accurate, except that the crime that is being prosecuted against the governor.
There's no crime. There never was one.
Listen to me, man, because for purposes of this conversation, and we can get to that part, but let's say for your hypothetical where I've run on campaigning against Governor Polis and I decided to bring, let's say the crime is murder and we have great evidence of the murder.
Murder?
Hang on, man, hang on. I'm giving you a hypothetical, brother, just like you gave me one. Let's say for purposes of that hypothetical, it's murder and we have great evidence of the murder and that the governor committed it. Does the fact that I made these really ridiculous decisions about hiring someone I may have been attracted to and we went and spent a whole bunch of the taxpayer, does that stuff change the fact that Governor Polis should be prosecuted for murder? Yes or no?
Well, it's not a yes or no question, because the first thing that's going to happen is that, just a second. Just a second.
Careful, Joe. Remember, one of us gets to have that tone. The other one's you.
The first thing that's going to happen is that all of the prosecution team is going to get thrown out of office, and you're going to have to find a new prosecutor.
But thrown out of office by whom and by what mechanism?
By any reasonable elected body. That's for sure.
So you're saying that prosecutor would be recalled?
Not only should they be recalled, impeached, fired, whatever it takes to get rid of them.
Okay, but so it sounds like what you're saying is, in that scenario, in that hypothetical, you want the prosecutors removed, but the prosecution against the governor for these allegations of murder should continue on. It just shouldn't continue on under the leadership of the description you gave, right?
When you say these things, you forget that having a corrupt prosecutor is not the justice standard. You have to have prosecutors that are above reproach. You can't have people that are guilty of worse crimes than the ones that they're bringing against the people that they're bringing it.
You're going to get a lot of pushback and debate there from folks as to what's a worse crime. But let me say this. Let's say you have a prosecutor that's prosecuting somebody for murder, a political person for murder, and they go out and get a DUI, or they get out and they get accused of domestic violence. Are you telling me the defendant should reap the windfall of that because the prosecutor should be, quote, beyond reproach, in your words? Or do you say maybe it's time to get a different prosecutor, but the prosecution must continue? What do you think?
Okay, here's what I say is that, yes, if you're going to make these extreme, and by the way, ridiculous analogies of murder, then yes. If it's
I only do it for purposes of clarifying the issue.
Okay, but then let's make it more a closer analogy. Then let's look at the fact that Fani Willis is bringing a just tied in a knot, a theatrical case of RICO that has to be. You have to jump through all kinds of hoops just to get your mind to wrap around the phony case.
It's not that tortured, man. It's not that torture.
It is. Only for people that aren't quite sure that it's a phony case, and we are.
Yeah, but how you're debating something different. You're debating something different. And that you're debating
this would never be brought against a Democrat.
You're debating the substance of the case instead
of
this
case would not be brought against a Democrat.
Yeah, man, I don't know whether that's true or not. I'm just telling you.
You don't know. Well, let me help you.
Hold on, Joe. It's not true when you have Republicans out there, Trumpers, who are saying when we get into office, we're going to gin up the DOJ to go after our political enemies in the media. So when you say that doesn't happen to Democrats, it's about to, right?
Let me remind you of Emmett Sullivan prosecuting General Michael Flynn in a phony case, by the way, a phony case. Emmett Sullivan tried to get down off the bench and become the prosecutor. And that was during a Republican established, that was in 2020 before the election. So here's the thing. If it was a Democrat judge, a Democrat general, that Emmett Sullivan would have never prosecuted him.
So to get back to the point, though, do you believe that the case against Donald Trump in Fulton County should be dismissed because of the allegations regarding Fani Willis? Because of that, not because you think it's substanceless, but because of the conduct of Fani Willis as alleged in these.
I will answer.
Great.
Before any of that is established, the first thing that has to happen is a clean house of all the prosecution team and probably a new venue, new judge. So once that's all cleaned out,
what did the judge do wrong?
Just a moment, let me finish the answer.
What did the judge do wrong?
I'll finish the answer. Then, if they can find a prosecutor that'll bring the case, yes, but they can't because there's nobody as phony as Fani Willis.
I get it. Why the judge? What did the judge do wrong?
Well, for one, the judge is hearing cases with kangaroos committing the Ruski.
Wait a minute, the judge isn't in charge of that. The judge can't just decide you don't get to be a prosecutor on this case. They're not empowered to do that.
Well, it's a tainted court. It's already
tainted. How?
Heard argument.
How is it tainted?
Yes, it has to be thrown out. Give me a break.
How is it tainted? How is the judge tainted?
Because they have all heard evidence by the phony investigators. That's why. It
So
has
the
to
judge
start
hears evidence
over
and that taints them?
because it's phony evidence by the phony prosecutors.
Joe, we were on a thread there for a bit. I was trying to track you. I couldn't do it. Joe, thank you for the phone calls always. Animated. And it's good because it gets the energy going. It gets people texting in. 303-696-1971 is the number. Corey, we got you on the line as well as David. Let me do this. Can I cut away for a break? When we come back, of course, I will take you, and that way we can have a little bit of a longer conversation without having to worry about James getting in my ear and rightfully telling me it's time to shut up. So let's do that. We'll cut away for a break. Not till I tell you about Rocky Mountain Men's Clinic. You know, one of the things that you may be experiencing if you're men of a certain age is that lack of quality sleep, that lack of joie de vivre, that just low energy. There's a lot of reasons it could be happening, but one worth exploring is the one that dudes just don't talk about to each other, right? Guys just don't look at each other and go, hey, have you ever had a low testosterone issue? And that's because we associate it with, I don't know what it is, but we're afraid to talk about it like somehow it's a question mark on our manhood or something. It's not, right? It's just the medical stuff that takes place in the normal human adult male body. But check it out, because Rocky Mountain Men's Clinic has a solution. And my God, wouldn't you want one? Wouldn't you want to fix that if you could? Go to RockyMountainMen'sClinic.com. 10-question quiz, super easy, true, false. You're going to do better than I did on that aerospace engineering thing in the science of flight class. I know it. But if you qualify for this, give them a call at 720-440-7900, 720-440-7900. Set up that appointment. It's $99 unless you end up deciding to go with them, and then that gets rolled in to the cost of the treatment. Change your life. Have the guts to make the call. There's no shame in it. Just call them. Improve your life. 720-440-7900, Rocky Mountain Men's Clinic. We're going to cut away for a break, come back, and we're going to work our way through our phones. Corey, you're up next. It's George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Getting right back to the phone lines as promised. Corey, you're on 710. What do you think, sir?
Hey, good morning, George. How are you doing this morning?
It's trying to stay warm. How about you?
Yeah, the same. It's pretty cold out there. Hey, look, you know me. I'm a career prosecutor at
Yep.
the low level, at the municipal level. But I still have ethics, and ethics still apply,
Yep.
no matter what level we have. Certainly, I think in this case in Georgia, I think obviously this person who was hired should be replaced. I think it should be replaced by somebody appointed by somebody else, like maybe the state attorney general. We saw that happen in Colorado when member Phil Weiser was appointed by the governor to replace the district attorney down south who was having some problems, right? So you have to remove the political nature of it. This is when we see these folks appointed or elected who have no experience in criminal prosecution, it's a problem, right? I mean, we had somebody run against John Kellner before, and John barely beat them, who had absolutely no experience and was a political hack,
Well, she'd done a DUI before, John.
I'm telling you, I have more experience than she does, and I'm still not
You
qualified.
do by a ton. Here's what I worry about for us, Corey, and it's such a good call. Here's what I worry about for us is that you and I are going to continue to get in the courtroom and pick juries, right? And those jurors are going to now, because of things like this, become increasingly skeptical of prosecutor motives for bringing a case, which should never, ever factor into their analysis. Their analysis should be, I trust the system enough that I'm going to listen, I'm going to judge credibility, I'm going to determine what evidence to apply to this particular law, and I'm going to make a decision, and then I'm going to go on about my life. We are now politicizing what you and I have done for a career to the point where I think future jurors are going to engage in more and more jury nullification based off of things you and I can't predict.
No, I absolutely hear you. It's problem enough, in some jurisdictions being a prosecutor and trying to pick jurors who are going to be fair and not so critical against the criminal justice system. This is going to add on to it. But we don't have to go that far. I mean, take a look at the state of Colorado itself, for example. Take a look at the highest prosecutor in our state. That would be, at the federal level. Who is the top prosecutor at the federal level in the U.S. District Court in the state of Colorado? A guy named Cole Finnegan.
True. Cole
Finnegan, before appointed at that point, has zero experience in criminal prosecution. He was Hickenlooper's city attorney, therefore previously my boss. I know this guy. No experience whatsoever in criminal prosecution. When he came to city attorney, and who did he appoint to be the top prosecutor in the prosecution section? Oh, yeah, the guy in the office with the least amount of experience.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he had less than 2 years experience in prosecution, but he was all of a sudden appointed to be my boss. And who did he pick? He picked somebody who was basically the deputy city attorney, his pet bulldog, who watched his back, who was also a narcissist. You got to understand, these narcissists think they can do everything what they want to because
it's all about
of
this
them.
stuff is dreadful.
Yeah, and if you look at the actual diagnosis of psychotic narcissists, they also have a very over-sexualization of themselves. And so I'm seeing this gal in Georgia, man, to take on this kind of case and campaign on it, and then hire this dude, right? Here's the problem. The question is going to be, as you know and I know, the prosecutor having the case has to have the independence to be able to make decisions, including the ultimate decision of dismissing a case when it's inappropriate to proceed forward. I'm more proud of cases I dismissed because it was the right thing to do than I am about cases I've actually won in front of a jury. I think it's the most important power that a prosecutor has is the power of dismissal.
That's such an important point too. Knowing how and when to withhold prosecution and against whom and in what circumstances, that's the real art of it. I mean, any fool can simply prosecute or indict every single thing that comes across their desk. You don't need a seasoned prosecutor for that, but knowing how and when to withhold prosecution and then answer to the public for it. That's a big deal. Corey, man, great conversation. You've talked us through to the end of the segment, my man. Hey, David, and everybody else calling in at 303-696-1971. I promise we'll get to you after this break. You just got to stick around for a little bit, and we'll get to all the good stuff with you. The text, the calls is George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here on 710 KNUS. Hey, James, I forgot to ask you during that break. We still have David on the line? Yeah. Let's do this. I want to keep hitting the phones because I love the conversations with you guys. We've been talking about this Fani Willis alleged romantic relationship with the special prosecutor who appears to have no experience at all in handling cases of any kind like the one that he's handling now against President Trump and the multitude of co-defendants that have been generated. Some will say, but wait, he's successfully prosecuted a handful of them because they've taken deals. Okay, if that's the measure of competent prosecution, yeah, sure, he's gotten some convictions. That's not really the measure in my mind. We'll see what happens when he actually has to go to trial and pick a jury and all that other stuff. We saw how that went with the two big civil attorney guys who weren't licensed in Colorado that Phil Weiser brought out to prosecute the officers in the McLean case. Maybe it'll be a different result. But the real question for me is there a distinction to be drawn? And I think there is between whether or not Fani Willis ought to continue on as the prosecutor in charge of this case versus whether the case should continue. There's a motion to dismiss in part for these huge optics issues and ethics issues at stake here. I'm just not sure you give any defendant a windfall result because the prosecutor makes the kinds of decisions that are alleged to have been made by Fani Willis. Let's go to David. David, you're on 710 KNUS. Thanks, my man, for hanging on. I apologize for the wait.
No problem. My real question is, why did Willis and Wade have those meetings in the White House with Kamala Harris?
I don't know what the content of those meetings were or the purpose of those meetings. And in fact, David, it's interesting. Someone texted in, I think it was Brian texted in. I'm going to read this to you because it echoes what you said. I'm more concerned about the process if the case against Trump is valid, then it should proceed as charged. And I agree that if I were DJT, I would be screaming at them to shut up and let's take these clowns on in court. However, can you speak to the fact that Willis and Wade made several trips to the White House? From your experience, have you ever been given evidence from the U.S. Attorney General or a congressional committee? Isn't that something we should know? And that sort of gets to the heart of your thing, is like, why are they going to the White House? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me why a prosecutor would go to the White House on a case like this. No matter what the issues are, if there's information to be shared, it doesn't require an in-person meeting with our failed vice president. It doesn't require that. Like, you can get that information otherwise. So to answer Brian's question, I haven't gotten information from the U.S. Attorney General's office, but have we gotten information from federal agencies? Yes, we have. We use it all the time. If there was a congressional investigation that resulted in admissible evidence, like maybe it's through sworn testimony, yes, I would want that. There's nothing wrong with that. But the concern I have is, why do you need to physically go to the White House? What is the purpose in that?
I agree, unless they wanted to get instructions from Barack Hussein Obama.
Well, except that this is Kamala Harris they were met with. Is that what you said? What does that have to do with Obama?
Well, he's running the White House. You know that.
No, I don't know that. And I don't know that.
He's a puppeteer, and Biden just holds the pen in the phone, I mean, you can just see that.
Do you have evidence of that, David, or is this just this narrative that's being pushed by some in MAGA?
No, you could pretty well see it because where Obama always keeps showing up. Obama,
because he showed up at the White House.
Obama is on his next term of president. The only thing is he doesn't have that phone and pen like he did, but he's still running it. In my opinion, I don't have any proof. It's just my opinion.
Well, the proof thing's kind of a big deal when you make allegations like that. But David, final question for you: do you think that whatever this allegation stuff is between Fani Willis and Nathan Wade and all that, let's say it's all 100% true, that's what's going on, do you think that means that the underlying case against Trump should be dismissed because of that, or they should just have new prosecutors making decisions about the case against Trump?
Well, I think what they should do is take it out of a Democrat party, move it to a neutral. I don't even know that there's any neutral prosecutors in that anymore. I look at it and, I look at Merrick Garland, he's waving that thing, just telling all these prosecutors, go after him here, go after him here, go after him here, go after
What is
him
that?
here.
What are you talking about, David?
Well, you got New York. You got.
Yeah, but what does that have to do with Merrick Garland? That's a local prosecutor.
Yeah, but Merrick Garland's giving him instructions.
Well,
go here, buddy.
Hold on.
Go
Where's
ahead.
where's the evidence of that? And why in the world does Alvin Bragg care what Merrick Garland thinks?
Oh, he may be going more with George Soros. Like most DAs that. Were you given money by George Soros?
Never.
God bless you, buddy. Have a good day.
Thanks, Dave. Hey, David's line is open at 303-696-1971. Lots of texts that have come in here on this thing. If I'm smart, I'll be able to figure out how to get to them. And here they are. Here's one. Well, I do believe Barack Obama, Loretta Lynch, Eric Holder, Susan Rice, and Big Mike are running the show. It's a belief. Everyone's entitled to one. If you had the evidence, though, that's what I'm looking for. And David at least was credible enough to admit, I don't have. Someone else texted in, Nathan Wade's been paid over $1 million for his work on the case. I read like 700,000, but maybe I've got something outdated. If you have a link that says $1 million, especially for less than 3 years work, one, that's crazy money. And two, how do I get that job? Appoint me. I'll do it for $1 million. I'm not even sure what it is, but $1 million, that's a lot. Another text from before on one of the callers, Sour Grapes. Here's another one. My ears hurt. Please, Joe. Should the case against OJ be dropped because Marsha Clark and Chris Darden were having an affair during the trial? I hope that were they? I hope that was speculative, but no, absolutely. That's a great question though, is no. And that's why I brought up the murder thing. The crime itself carries its own weight and commands its own attention. How it's handled matters. Don't get me wrong. And there are sometimes prosecutors can engage in misconduct that does work to the benefit of the defendant, even though they don't deserve it. And I'll give you an example. It happened in my own office. We were prosecuting a guy who killed a state trooper driving down the road, just, in his truck, never gave him the wide berth that he was entitled to, clipped this trooper and killed him. His name was Cody Donahue. It was a horrific crime with catastrophic consequences for his wife and children and the state patrol. I went out to that scene. Devastating. We're prosecuting him, and we got pretty, but I think rightfully and appropriately aggressive on that case. And we charged this guy with felonies related to not murder, not like that. It wasn't intentional. But because there were mistakes made by the prosecutors I assigned to the case, so that means I have to wear these mistakes, right? The prosecutors assigned to the case made some mistakes. There was a discovery violation. That discovery violation means that certain information that was owed to the defense didn't get to them. The judge never found it was intentional or it was the product of us trying to hide the ball. It was just stupid and it was a mistake. And that mistake led to the court reducing the charge against this killer of Cody Donahue. That made me sick. It made my stomach hurt. We appealed the decision. I think it got to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, nope, that was an appropriate use of the judge's discretion, blah, 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 blah. That can happen. But there was never, ever going to be a dismissal of that case over even that kind of a mistake. This doesn't even touch upon the due process nature of the prosecution as much as it does, I think, the horrible optics associated with it. I got this link. Thank you for sending this texter. So I asked the $1 million that this dude, this Nathan Wade divorce lawyer guy, has been paid. Sent me a link to the ANF, the Atlanta News First people. And I'm going to go through this during a break and try to see if it's got that $1 million in there to see how much this guy's been paid. Here's some more text. One thing that I find disturbing is that both of the prosecutors visited the White House. Oh, this is from Lisa. This is the same thing that David said. Who did they contact and what subject did they discuss? I think that's important. I don't think it's dispositive, though, of the substance of the case against President Trump or any of the co-defendants. But it doesn't make sense to me that a local prosecutor would travel to the White House on a prosecution like this, especially when the White House is where the political rival of the guy you're prosecuting lives. That doesn't make any sense to me. I'd have to know more. I mean, maybe you get a phone call from the White House. And if you're the elected DA, you feel like I got to take a call from the president. Maybe. But maybe what you say is, this is a phone call that should go to my number 2 or the chief or whoever it is I put in charge of the case. It's just super tough to try to keep the political optics thing out of this when you're going to the White House. I don't know. I don't know why she did it. It is concerning to me. I'd like to know what the purpose was. Why would you go there? And let me be clear about this too. If I were to, as a district attorney, ever feel like, hey, I've got a prosecution and I think it's justified against fill in the blank, right? And it was a Democrat, even a high profile Democrat. And I thought it was just, by the way, you should know the Democrats would go crazy. They'd say, well, this is clearly partisan because Brauchler is a Republican and he's a high profile Republican and a conservative. And he's said all these nasty things about Polis and Weiser and question that. That would all be fair for litigation in front of a judge. Wouldn't keep me from prosecuting them if they committed a crime in the jurisdiction. But here's the question. If Donald Trump were in the White House and he called me and said, hey, I want to talk to you about this prosecution, would I take the call? No. Nope. If Nikki Haley were president and she called, I want to talk to you about this prosecution, you don't take the call. If the attorney general were a Republican, if it was John Kellner and he called me, I want to talk to you about this prosecution, I'd say no. And he'd do the same if I were the AG and he were the DA. That's because you cannot let those outside influences. And I want to make this clear for Jared and his team. If Kim Kardashian called and said, I want to talk to you about this prosecution, I wouldn't take the call. That's just not how this game is played, folks. That's not how you beat the perception that there's something else going on. Someone texting in, why is Mar-a-Lago more of a crime than the Delaware Fikes? I'm missing something. Why is Trump guilty of that crime when he has a defense on why he had the boxes? He doesn't actually have a defense on why he has the boxes. For those folks that are caught up in the idea that this is about the president being able to declassify anything about thinking about it, he's not being prosecuted for that. That's fake. He's being prosecuted for maintaining possession of government property beyond the time he could lawfully possess it. He lacked the authority to convert it to private property, and when asked for it back by the government, repeatedly refused to turn it over. That's what he's being prosecuted for. This is not a classification, declassification thing. Another text, George, I think some people don't realize all caps mean you're yelling. Might be worth mentioning. That might be a reference, by the way, to our friend Eric. But honestly, it's not that they're all caps. It's that every word is capitalized at the front end. It was just, it's a little weird. But that's where we've got some more texts that are here on this. Fani Willis is a homewrecker. Her speech was ridiculous. She did not deny the charges of the affair. Well, the article I read said she did. Said she denied the romantic relationship, but maybe that turns out to not be right. And then, this is a quote. You cannot expect black women to be perfect. We need to be allowed to stumble. We need grace. We are all sinners. Jesus, what's that a reference to? I mean, that can't be a reference to the prosecution. That has to be a reference to something else. Is it I don't know. Eric sent a text, by the way, a normal text. Okay, George, I think that George Soros has put out a private hush money contract bounty with Letitia James, Fani Willis, Alvin Bragg, and Jack Smith on President Trump's head. Whoever gets President Trump collects the reward bounty money. People with power will do anything if the price is right. I disagree with virtually every single thing you put in there, Eric. There's no evidence of that. If you have it, bring it forward. Or if it's just, I believe it, then just say, that's just what I believe. But two, that would be a crime worth prosecuting and incarcerating people. If that were true, I don't believe it. If that's the case, why just those four? Why not other people? Why not other prosecutors out there? Dude's a billionaire. He could probably find plenty of prosecutors out there to offer money to prosecute President Trump. Why these? I don't think that's true. I don't think they needed money to want to pursue this for political reasons. And then here's the link to the story. Darden finally concedes he and Marsha Clark were more than friends. Yikes. And no, the O.J. Simpson case shouldn't have been dumped if those two were knocking boots or whatever. Here's another text. Libtards are the same as Trump-tards. They're all hyper-partisan, narcissistic idiots. Our country is ruined. No, that's too much. I agree with some of what you said in there, but that's too much. I don't think our country is ruined. I do think that Trump's statement in that address at the Lyceum back there in what was that, 1836, is dangerously closer than it has ever been since the Civil War. And that is the idea that as a nation of free men, we shall live and prosper forever or die by suicide. The idea that we will be the author of our own demise. I believe we're closer to that than we've been in a long, long time. But I don't think we're doomed. I think that at some point here, we're going to shuffle off the last 10 years and figure out a way to move forward as a better America, a less toxic, politically motivated America. I believe that's possible. It's just going to require some changes to the way that we represent ourselves and who we send to represent ourselves. I mean, that's the big deal right there. Here's another one. Seriously, if the trip to the White House was nefarious, why publicize it? Stupid analysis. I don't think so. I don't think so. It doesn't have to be nefarious for it to be a huge mistake. What if it was just, hey, Fani, Willis, and Kamala Harris were roommates from college and she went out there? I don't know why she'd bring Nathan Wade, but they go out there and they're just saying, hey, what can we do to help you? Or so I don't care. The optics of it's a rookie mistake. And especially for a prosecutor like Fani Willis, who's been at this for decades, it's a rookie mistake politically to involve yourself in going to the White House during a prosecution of the president's current and past political rival. That's just dumb. That's just an unforced error. Why she did it, I don't care. That she did it is the problem. It's a judgment problem. Another text. Georgia problem with residents in Colorado. They're too naive. I can call the studio and pretty much say anything. I want to say I'm not going to lose my job and I'm not going to be sued. But I have to believe behind closed doors, you are a true blue Trump supporter and you do think that there is bias in the court systems and these judges. What? What are you talking about? There's nobody out there that would consider me a Trumpster. There just isn't. At the same time, I voted for the guy twice, and if that's my only alternative to continuing the current administration, I would do it a third time. But, and I do think there's bias in the court system and these judges. I do worry about bias. I do. And the judges involved, I don't know the judge out in Atlanta. I'm not going to presume there's something wrong. I don't even know if it's a him or a her. I'm not going to presume there's something wrong with the judge the way Joe did. I mean, well, he let this go on. What do you mean let this go on? I mean, the judges aren't all powerful and all knowing. They think they are, but they're not. They don't have the ability to just say, I'm going to get to the bottom of what's happening here. Things have to be brought before them. They don't have a lot of sua sponte, meaning on their own kind of powers. You have to move them to do something. That's why you have motions. You're asking the court to take action. It's not the French system where the judges are the investigators. It's not how it works here in America. And then we'll take one more text here out of the many that we're getting, and you can keep it going before we come back. Another one from our buddy Eric, appropriately decapitalized. George, they were the chosen four puppets. That's all George Soros needed. Now, bring the proof, Eric. If you've got evidence, I'm happy to discuss it. If it's just this is what I think is going on and it all makes sense to me because I've strung the lines between the pegs on the map on the United States, no, that's not going to do it for me. Hey, listen, I got to cut away for a break. I don't want to do it, though, before I tell you about Dan Caplis, wicked, smart, righteous prosecutor for those who have been wronged by someone's negligence, recklessness, and sometimes intentional conduct. And people have asked, why do you keep saying sometimes intentional conduct? Because sometimes intentional conduct, you can't get a recovery for it because the money that might be available from an insurance policy excludes intentional conduct by someone. So that's why I say sometimes intentional conduct. But there are cases where intentional conduct can be successfully litigated by Dan Kaplis and his partner, Babar Wahid. And if there's a way to do it, they'll figure out how to do it. If you have a righteous case, if you've been wronged, your life has been changed for the worse by someone else or a company, trucking company, a business, doesn't matter. These guys are fearless. There is no one you can say, hey, this person wronged me. And they'd say, oh, I don't want to touch that. No, that's not these guys. These are the guys that say, you point out Goliath, we'll go get the smooth stones from the water and we'll meet him on the battlefield. They'll convince these people to do the right thing, or they'll get a jury to make them do the right thing. Give them a call at 303-770-5551, 303-770-5551, or you can check them out at dankaplislaw.com. That's Kaplis, C-A-P-L-I-S, law.com. We're going to cut away for a break. When we come back, we're going to get to your calls, your texts. It's George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Back with you here. I think we might shift topics. I'll hit a couple of the texts that have come in since the break, but I think we might shift topics because I don't want to get out of this morning without talking to you about something that the state GOP did late last night. But before I do that, let me remind you that if you're in the business of trying to get into or out of a home, the best person to call is Gay Ribble and team, the Empower Home team of Keller Williams. I bragged about these folks forever. I think we're getting Gay in studio this week. And I tell you that because if you've got questions about real estate, why not call and get that free advice over the radio? It makes me smarter too. But you don't have to wait for her to be on the radio to do it. You can call her at 833-301-SOLD, 833-301 sold. Have the conversation with them about, hey, is there a better time this year to sell than now? Is there a better time to buy this year and now? Should we sell and buy? Should we sell and rent and then buy? What do you expect to happen with rates? They know the areas that are prime and ready and ripe to get a great deal on so that you can make more money on your home as you move forward. Give them a call at 833-301-SOLD or check them out at sellwithcertaintycolorado.com. sellwithcertaintycolorado.com. Here's a couple of the texts, and then we'll change up the topic here. It says, if Trump wins, God forbid, the destruction of this country will need on your head. Will need on your head? Oh, I think you probably mean will be on my head. I don't think so. I'm pretty certain that no single race, local, state, or federal, will ever rest on my head because nothing I do can make a difference in that particular outcome. George, Fani is Biden's hitman. You mean woman. Her last-minute prosecution of Trump is communist lawfare. Why communist, by the way? Why can't it just be lawfare? Orchestrated by Biden. Her lover met with Biden and expensed the trip, left a paper trail. U.S. justice system is corrupted. Now look at that. Look what you've done. There are thousands of legitimate prosecutions every single day across America, and you've just indicted the entire system because some divorce lawyer, part-time traffic judge who got hired by purportedly his girlfriend to prosecute Trump. Now the whole U.S. justice system is corrupted. Stop already. It says Jordan investigating, and then it's got a bunch of stuff here, stories about, there's even one from Mediaite. Newt Gingrich claims somebody in Washington called Fani Willis on Friday and told her she would have to indict Trump on Monday. Yeah, I don't know. Is that something I'd want to know about? Yeah, sure. I'd love to know what that means. Is there an innocuous explanation for it? Sure. It could be, and I don't know why it'd be the White House, but I get somebody from Washington, perhaps DOJ, calling and saying, hey, we're in the process of issuing a subpoena or concluding our investigation or questioning this witness. Could you pretty please wait until Monday for the indictment? I could see that happening. That's not corrupt. That kind of coordination takes place all the time. Something else here. Here's the link to the video of her saying this. Fani Willis said, you cannot expect black women to be perfect and save the world. We need to be allowed to stumble. We need grace. We are all flawed sinners, unworthy and perfect damage, but we are qualified upon his calling. Honestly, I don't disagree with that comment. I'm not sure it has to be limited to black women. Why couldn't it just say you cannot expect people to be perfect and save the world? I don't know why it always devolves into race and gender kind of stuff. Here's what I wanted to talk to you about today in addition to this. And that is an action that the State Central Committee took of the Colorado GOP. It's something we chatted with Dave Williams about on one of the many times he's been on the show. We knew that this was going to be considered. And so here's what happened. By about a 2/3, 1/3 vote, 65% of the committee voting in favor. I think there's about 400 members, 34% voting against, a video online kind of voting thing. It appears that the State Central Committee has chosen to throw out the window any notion that it will remain agnostic in primary elections involving Republicans and has chosen to endorse former President Donald Trump in his bid for the presidency. Now, we have a presidential primary coming up. We're part of Super Tuesday. And as irrelevant as that may seem to the larger picture of who gets the nomination for the Republicans, it's relevant here in the state of Colorado. To show up on that primary ballot matters. To give people the chance to vote matters. It matters so much that the party made money off the backs of other candidates who wanted a fair shot at the nomination and at winning our primary, to the tune of, I think it was like $40,000. $40,000. I think Haley's campaign, maybe DeSantis. I can't remember who else. I don't know if Burgum may have paid money. Party took that money to put them on a ballot. My guess is when they asked them for that money, they did not tell them, oh, by the way, we're going to come out and put our official imprimatur on Donald Trump's candidacy for president. Maybe they would have said, you know what? I think I'll take a pass. I think I'm just going to take a pass on Colorado on this one. If you're going to come out and tip the scales in his favor through your official endorsement, I won't give you the money. So the question I have now, and I'd love to ask Dave when we get him back on, I will. Do you feel like you should refund that money to them or give them the opportunity to reach out to them and say, hey, we've decided to endorse against your candidacy for president? Because that's what an endorsement in favor of a person is. It's an endorsement against another. Would you like your money back? Now, I don't know what the fundraising of the GOP has been like since Trump was kicked off the ballot by a 4-3 vote of the Supreme Court. Maybe it's gone up a bunch, and that would be great news. But it feels like they need the money. It feels like fundraising has been a bit of an issue here. We're now in the middle of January, literally the Ides of January. And we don't know what the total fundraising numbers are yet for 2023. And I'd love to get to the bottom of that. But do you refund that money or do you say, nope, no, that's okay. We should take money from candidates we endorse against in the primary. And the bigger question I have for you is, do you agree with the 65% of state central committee members who voted to endorse Trump in a Republican primary? Or do you go with the other more than 1/3, the 34% who voted against? This is not a question about whether or not you support Donald Trump, because there are people in some of the articles I've read who are Trump supporters who are like, I just think it's wrong. We can't be doing this. Do you agree? Or was this a mistake? You asked me, mistake. There is simply no good reason to abandon the idea that the Republican Party exists to advance the cause of Republicans, not any individual candidate short of nomination. The other problem that this creates is, having done this now, having engaged in this now, if you're running for CD5, Doug Lamborn's soon-to-be vacated seat because he's not seeking re-election, do you further question the notion that one of the contenders for this, one of the leading contenders, maybe the leading contender, I don't know, Dave Williams, is the chair of a party who was willing to weigh in during a Republican primary, and oh my gosh, now he's engaged in one. And we know he's got at least two other competitors in Bob Gardner, state senator, and Jeff Crank from AFP. And we talked to Paul Lundeen, he may jump in. I've heard other names bandied about, maybe Wayne Williams. I don't know. Do you question now whether here's the other thing. You heard Jeff Crank say, I'm not going through the assembly. I've always gone through the assembly. I love the assembly, the assembly, the assembly, the assembly, but not now. I don't trust it. Does a vote like this, I don't know, man. I just question this. I wish I had been I used to be part of the committee by virtue of representing CD4. I don't understand why it happened. I don't understand why we needed to do this. I mean, here's what Dave said, Dave Williams, D. Will. On the eve of the Iowa caucuses, the Colorado Republican Party wanted to give President Donald J. Trump a big send-off. Why? What the hell business is it of yours to give a guy who's in a heated battle, even if you think he's going to run away with it for the nomination, to give him a send-off? I don't understand. I mean, unless the Republican Party now stands for the idea that if you're far enough ahead in the polls we've questioned in the past and rightfully questioned in the past, if you're far enough ahead in the polls, then our process doesn't matter. A big send-off by enthusiastically endorsing him for president in November, adding that the state party is more than happy to stand with President Trump because he risked it all to stand for this country. I just spit up in my mouth. Come on. He risked it all? What did he risk? It can't be the stuff that's come afterwards because he can't know that's coming at the time that he runs. What did he risk? Come on, man. I mean, this is just part of this problem that we're having here where we're not able to separate the idea of principle from what we're doing here. I think it's a huge mistake, but I'm just me. I'm just on the radio. What I'm really interested in are your thoughts on this at 303-696-1971. Was the Republican Party right in endorsing President Trump in advance of the Iowa caucuses and, more importantly, in advance of our own primary? Doesn't make any sense to me. I don't get it. Here's some stuff I'm looking at through some who has paid money to the party to access the ballot. Vivek Ramaswamy, who, by the way, Trump has now turned on. I don't know if you've seen that. He now says voting for Vivek is wrong because Vivek isn't MAGA and all this other stuff. And Vivek, I think pretty shrewdly, has not taken the bait to attack Donald Trump. Instead, he said, hey, I'm not going to criticize the best president of the 21st century. That's what Vivek says. I just think it's a waste of time and a mistake to turn on another American first. I mean, I think that's smart. Here, Vivek, $40,000. Ron DeSantis, $10,000. Doug Burgum, $20,000. Well, Donald J. Trump, man, he got every dollar. He got that dollar's worth. He put in $40,000. This is nuts, man. I think, did Haley pitch in money too? I mean, you're looking at over $100,000 to get ballot access. And I imagine there's more than that, but over $100,000 to get access to the primary. And they've just gone ahead and said, we're actually going to be supporting. We're not, by the way, be clear. They said they're not going to spend any money, any of the party's money helping Trump. They're just going to get all the earned media and put their official seal on the president. Does that make any sense to you? And tell me why. 303-696-1971. Is this how a party should be conducting business? And if so, do you trust the process? If you're thinking for running for office out there, do you trust that process? If the party can come out against you? Frank from Golden, you're on 710 KNUS. Frank, what do you think?
Oh, George, this is just another completely unforced error and another reason to not affiliate with the Republican Party. This is all just litmus test stuff again. And yeah, there's no reason. I mean, I can't believe they did this. And in particular, like you pointed out, after they took money from candidates to get on the ballot. I mean, what's the point of having a primary at all at this point? I mean, you've circumvented the whole thing.
Well, you know what? They might agree with you, Frank. Why have a primary? It should just be Trump. We should just anoint him. There's no reason for us to go through this process. What a waste of time.
Well, isn't this just maybe there's a little more to this, and I don't know, maybe I'm missing it, and I'm just not enough of a politico to notice it. But there's the huge problem with having unaffiliated voters participate in primaries, even though unaffiliated voters financially support these primaries. That's right. But really here, you've made the primary completely irrelevant. I mean, really, as far as the presidential election is concerned. And so you've never wanted to allow unaffiliated to participate anyway. So, you've just made this that much easier to keep them out. I mean, what's the point now,
I don't know. I don't know that the endorsement here changes the outcome, but that can't be the analysis, right? Like if you're a Republican or you're trying to woo people into rejoining or joining for the first time the Republican Party, one of the principles of the party has been that we are a procedure and a process driven party of principle, not outcome driven. We're not Machiavellian, right? Like we could have taken the Aurora Theater shooter out back and put a bullet in his head right in the back of the parking lot. And some people would have said, well, hey, that would have been justice, but not under our Constitution. Still got to go through the process, right? This is no different. Still got to go through the process. But now we have a party willing to put its finger on the scales. Who are we?
I don't know, George. I mean, to be honest, from the outside looking in, I can't identify. I'm afraid, and I've used this phrase way too much, that the party is drifting into the cult, and that these litmus tests that are now formal litmus tests, not informal, formal, it's creating, similar to what you just said. I've always viewed the Republican Party as the rational party, the party that 2 + 2 = 4, and like you said, logic drives the decision making. And all of this is going away. It's all now a party of emotion. It's a party driven by emoting over one individual without even thinking about what is going on. Like you say, the process or whatever else. If that one individual, wins the primary, then okay, he's the guy. This is where the horse we're riding. But to just take that away is unbelievable. What if something were to happen? I guess I asked this just hypothetically, but what if something were to happen to Trump? What if he, dropped dead of a stroke between now and then? I mean, what's the party doing now? Who's the horse you're backing now? None of this makes any sense. I suppose that could happen after a primary. It doesn't matter. But why are we just jumping the gun here? What's the point of it, other than just litmus test, emotional litmus test? And I don't get it. I mean, Dave Williams, that statement, did he author that statement you just read?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, as we know, Dave makes a lot of the decisions himself. He gets weigh in from some of the Central Committee on some things, but like when he sent out that email that attached his political announcement for office, that, as he said on the show, that was a him-only decision. I presume he's the one that crafted this thing.
That's and I hate to say it, but didn't you mention, and I think it was on Next with Kyle Clark, didn't he have some sort of a quote that it appears the Republican Party exists only for Dave Williams at this point? And it's getting more like that, isn't it? I mean, what are we doing here? Like this, where is the Republican Party going?
I don't know. I don't know the answer, Frank, but it's it concerns me as a lifelong Republican and someone who really has no intention to leave the party. I just want the party to come back to who it used to be. And I think if we were to do that, we would get more people joining. I just don't think this is the way to do it. I don't think anybody out there who's not a Republican sees this move and is like, oh, wait a minute, I want to be part of that group.
No.
And that has to be our calculation. How do we win people and win elections? And I just don't think we can. Hey, Frank, as always, thoughtful call. I appreciate the conversation, man. Thanks. Frank's line is open at 303-696-1971. Going to cut away for a break. I want to tell you very quickly about Ultra Cur. It is that curcumin-based. And by the way, before I tell you the rest of it, go Google curcumin and health benefits. Now, curcumin itself is not as awesome as this patented all-natural formula that includes curcumin, but check it out. I really had never seen it before we started talking with our friends at Ultra Botanica. This thing is like miracle type stuff, anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, a lot of pro health things going on there. I've taken it. Billy's taken it. We've experienced the health benefits. You can too, for free before you commit to the bigger bottle. You just go get your 3-day free supply from your natural grocers. Walk in the store, got to find the vitamin manager, and every one of the natural grocers has a vitamin manager. Check them out. Ask them for the 3-day free supply. And boom, I'm telling you, in about 48 hours or less, if you're like 50% of the people that have taken it, you are going to experience some positive health benefits, and then you'll be hooked. And then I want you to reach out to us and tell us how it went. You can research it on your own, but you can also look up getultranow.com, getultranow.com. When we come back, me, texts, phone calls. Is what the party just did here in endorsing Trump in advance of the primary smart? Not smart? Good, bad, make you less likely to become a Republican or less likely to stay a Republican? George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.
Say goodbye to clutter and hello to convenience when you experience organization transformation in your home. Roll 'em Out Shelves, your clutter transformation experts, create affordable Colorado-crafted organized storage solutions. These custom options will maximize and organize your kitchen and bath storage as Roll 'em Out Shelves carefully designs and builds roll-out drawers to fit your space perfectly to clear the clutter. Contact owners Joyce and Brent at Roll 'em Out Shelves to schedule your free in-home estimate today.
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Let's get right to the phone lines. It's Jim, you're on 710. What do you think, sir?
Hey, good morning. I think Lindsey Graham, hit the nail on the head in 2016 when he said that Donald will destroy our party and will deserve it. It's exactly what's happened. I mean, Donald Trump has taken a big portion of their donations and their voters and ran away with them.
Listen, Jim, I have asked you this before. I keep forgetting. Are you a registered Republican? You unaffiliated? What are you?
I'm unaffiliated. So,
have you ever been a Republican?
Yeah, but I unaffiliated when I was in the military. When the so-called conservatives in the late '80s decided to reduce the military members' pay, benefits, and the military members. So my service dropped over 300,000 personnel over a 10-year period. But of course, it was instituted in '86, but it didn't occur until '90 and '93. That's where Lowry Air Force Base went away. And that's where during the second round of base realignment and closure, the study group came out. They thought that Colorado Springs was going to lose one, maybe two bases. But in '95, that president halted that because it was an election year as well. So
I presume, Jim, nothing about what has taken place here with the state party would encourage you to rejoin.
Oh, no, it's a clown show now. And unfortunately, these people that call themselves conservatives don't understand the basics of economics. We've had low interest rates for 15 years, abnormally low, and it's caused massive inflation.
Jim, thanks for the call, man. As always, you have an interesting perspective I always like to chat with you about. That's it for this hour. We're going to come back in the 9 o'clock hour. We'll continue the conversation. I got a couple other things I wanted to bring to your attention, but you stick around and give us a call, 303-696-1971. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. It is the final hour of the show before we turn it over to Chuck Kirk for a couple hours. We go Dennis Prager, then Seb Gorka. That's Sebastian Gorka, named, I believe he was named after the little crab in The Little Mermaid, or vice versa. And then we go with Brandon Tatum. He goes from 4 to 7, and then I'll be right back here tomorrow from 6 to 10 a.m. No James, though, tomorrow. He gets a reprieve, gets back to his normal life, and I will have instead the ability to subject Geronimo to the show. Now, we've been talking about, for the last couple hours, about two different things, all related to politics in a way. It's the way it ended up having to be. There's some more text coming in, but in that first part of the show, we talked about Fani Willis and the incredible optics that are growing out of that prosecution. I just got to tell you, folks, that there's one particular person who will remain nameless, but by description, you'll know who I'm talking about if you've listened to 710. Guy who used to have airtime on here before he blew up the bridge between himself and all the other radio markets in Denver. And this guy apparently has a fascination with me. He listens to he's listening to this word right now. He can't help it. He's listening to every word, tweeting frantically about me. Now, granted, most of his tweets are mischaracterizations, misquotes, and in some cases outright lies, but it's one of the most laugh out loud funny things to be a part of, and involuntarily a part of, because this dude is just fixated on our show and on me. It's weird. I used to think I knew this guy. There's something going on. I don't know if it's a mental illness thing, but there is something happening where this guy has clearly broken to the point of just outright hatred for anyway, that's out there. And I was following that during a break. Somebody turned me on to it, and I decided to look it up, but oh my sweet Lord, it's gone bonkers. And it was in relation to our conversation that we had about Fani Willis, who has made some decisions that call into question her decision-making in the prosecution of Donald Trump. And one of them was the decision to make the trip to go to the White House. Like, why would you do that? Why would you travel to the defendant's political rival's place of work and home? Why would you do that? There's probably an innocent answer, but the optics are undeniably horrible. Why would you hire a guy who does not have the chops to handle a drug case, has never handled a felony in Georgia? Why would you hire that guy to be the highly paid lead special prosecutor against Donald Trump, having paid him, according to this article, nearly $1 million of taxpayer money? Why would you do that? And then, oh, by the way, he filed for divorce the day after she appointed him to that position. And then, and now there's allegations that they were romantically involved and they've taken trips to. Why would you do that? See, those are all legitimate questions, but for this particular former radio guy, current kook, though you can't ask those questions. You can't do that because Donald Trump is the Antichrist. And if you don't say that every single time you get to, then there's something wrong with you. There's something bad about you. Nonetheless, that's what's going on. And then we talked about the decision by the state central committee, and somebody texted in, and I appreciate this, saying, Dave Williams didn't draft this petition to have Trump nominated. Yeah, he didn't. Did he speak out against it? I feel like he was supportive of it and endorsed it. I also think that part of leadership is to remind your organization what your principles are that you stand for. And that the opportunity here isn't to jump out in front of an obvious Trump win in Colorado and in Iowa, but to instead, and especially at those times, stick principles and procedures that we've adopted that allow the party to continue to look agnostic when there are battles between Republicans for any office. I just don't get it. Here's a text. Thoughts on Colorado State GOP CC voting to endorse Trump? I'm deeply concerned. I am too, Josh. I'm deeply concerned. That's what we've been talking about. I think it's a huge unforced error. Who else in our lives would we have ever done that for? Reagan? Would we have done that for Reagan? We certainly wouldn't have done it for Bush or any of the other Republican nominees. Would we have done it? Why would we do it for this guy? Why does he need it? Right? Like the quote that was in the paper from D. Will was, we wanted to send him off with an enthusiastic send-off. Why? Why do you need to do that? He risked so much for what are you talking about? It just doesn't feel like our party. And I think, some of the texters here are saying that they thought that this was an effort by David Williams to curry favor with the Trump campaign and to get endorsed by Trump for CD5. Doesn't that, just the thought that could be the motivation, isn't that the explanation why you shouldn't be both the state party chair and the guy who's running for a contested congressional seat? Doesn't that make sense? What are we doing? Who are we as Republicans? Or are we Republicans anymore? Or should we just rename the party to Trump MAGA? I mean, is that it? Is that where we're at? It's all about one man. It's not about anybody else. Nobody else would get this treatment. I just think this is a huge mistake. And it's reasons why when guys like Jeff Crank say, no, thank you, I'm not going to go through the assembly. I'm just going to petition on. Do you know who that pisses off? The hardcore group of grassroots activists that make up that state central committee and the different assemblies that are out there. If you're in charge of a county party, you have to look at this and think you've just now given more future candidates, even current candidates, reason to not want to go through the assembly because they feel like they couldn't get a fair shake. And how could you say, no, don't worry about it. Of course you're going to get a fair shake. I don't know. 303-696-1971 is the phone number. Some text, George, say hi to Stefan. Next time I'm in county lockup, I will. But no, I'm kidding. I'll see Stefan. I think Stefan's got a big reveal coming up. And by that, I don't mean the gender of whatever next baby he's fathering. I don't mean that. I mean a big reveal, like what he's going to do next. What's the next chapter of Stefan's life in this book that should be a Netflix series? I think we all agree that should happen, except for the San Diego part. And James, who is it? Jay, you're on 710 KNUS. Jay, what do you think?
Oh, good morning, George. I wanted to chat with you about this Fani Willis. I'm glad that you're covering it. Not only did she associate with this guy extensively, benefited from the funds that she paid to him from the county by going on vacation, but his billing shows that he went to the White House and met with Joe Biden's special counsel for
That's crazy.
Couple of days, actually. I mean, we're talking
that
major
is
collusion
crazy
here. The email, the copy of his bill says White House counsel met. This is exactly before this fake indictment was filed. Come on.
It feels like just the presence of those issues, and I can't imagine what they are, man, but even if there were innocent explanations, just the optics of it, it's like, who's making these decisions? Where's that person in your organization when you say, I'm going to do blank, that says the emperor has no clothes? Or have you just surrounded yourself with yes people? Like, where is that person that goes, please don't go to the White House. Please don't go on vacation with the special prosecutor. Please don't pay the special. Who's that person? Where's that voice in your office to tell you that's dumb, don't do it?
One talk show host in the weekends pointed out that actually it was Bill O'Reilly, that this is the county that jail and was going to throw away the key Martin Luther King back in the day. Literally was framing him. And none other than John F. Kennedy, our president, went and had him freed with his brother, the attorney general at the time. They framed Martin Luther King. We're going to throw away the key.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with this, but that you've called in makes me want to ask the question that we posed earlier in the show, and that is the optics of this so bad that the underlying case should be dismissed, or do you keep the case going and simply replace the decision makers on it?
Well, our president isn't guilty of any RICO charges or anything else against the country. I mean, everything that we've seen so far as I'm concerned, is gangland mob framing of someone and, throwing a bomb in the front
even the
door and saying
Mar-a-Lago
he
one?
did it.
Even the Mar-a-Lago one?
Well, the Mar-a-Lago is a little bit different. I think that if they really wanted those documents, it would have our president is protected by Secret Service. Did they need to go down there armed like they were arresting Al Capone? This is the president of the United States.
But you would agree that, and I don't want to turn this into a relitigation of the Mar-a-Lago thing today, but you would agree the archivist tried that multiple times. They even sent people down to get stuff, attorneys down, just attorneys, to get stuff from Trump's attorneys. And he ended up obfuscating and hiding some of the documents, even from his own attorney. So it's not like it was, hey, we're missing documents, send in SWAT. It wasn't like that, right? Like they tried to get him to give these things up, but he simply, for weird reasons that I don't understand, refused to do it. That feels different than some of these other cases.
Yeah, there's a lot of information out there, none of which I was personally privy to. But the part that I do know is they went down to get documents, did get boxes of documents, and said, okay, we have what we need, and they put a lock on that door. Now, after that, I can't speak to that. One other thing about this Atlanta issue, very, very interesting that's where really things swung in the election. And things really did go south there as far as the counting and all the things that went on with the election. But this particular person that supposedly is their district attorney, I think has to be not only removed, but if there is even a fathom of guilt, has to be removed to another county. I mean, you guys do that in the work that you've done. You'll move a case.
We don't do this. Like there have been cases, and I'm glad you brought this up, where the DA seeks a special prosecutor, and sometimes it's not required by the ethical rules, but it's required by the concept of what the optics are to the community and will they lose trust in the system. But when that happens, you don't move the case out of the jurisdiction in which it occurred. You just bring a special prosecutor. A perfect example is if someone in my family committed a crime in Douglas County when I was DA, I would have asked for Dan May or Michael Allen to send somebody up and prosecute them in our courts, but a different prosecutor making the decision. Does that make sense?
Well, sure. I went through the Judge Mace and the Joe Naccio case where they really went after federal justice Judge Mace when they were putting Joe Naccio in prison for basically ripping us off from the U.S. West Mountain Bell Quest. That was a big deal. They actually faked that he was going to Ladies of the Night. They did all kinds of things there, and I was right there for it from a security comm basis. And it was horrible how this Naccio and the New Jersey criminals went after a great judge in Denver, Colorado.
Yeah, I got a chance to spend a semester with Judge Mace in a class that he taught up at CU, and that dude was incredibly disciplined, incredibly principled. I mean, you suggest that guy was seeing ladies in the night. That's the other guy. That's what's his name, Blackburn or something like that. Remember, there was a federal judge that got into trouble for that, but not Mace.
No, Naccio is basically an East Coast gangster. He used to work for AT&T, and Phil's Anschutz hired him to run Quest Mountain Bell, and they ripped us all off. They basically raped the company. I could tell you all about it some other time.
Jay, do you
when they
think
prosecuted him.
Do you think that the case should continue just with different people at the helm?
No, and the reason is, and I know that it's wrong, is because if in fact I were represented as a special witness, and I have been, I would not be going to the President of the United States Council to get education. This attorney went there, and Fani Willis went there. That'd be pretty much. You're a smart guy. The handwriting's on the wall of what these folks are doing. Pretty smart.
We don't know what they're doing. And that's the problem, is that when you go up and put yourself in that position, you allow pretty smart people to start to speculate about what you're doing. So it's not crazy for you to think, hey, they went up there to have a conversation about how best to prosecute Donald Trump. Now, maybe they went up there for some other reason, but it's not crazy to think that's why they went up there. And now all of a sudden, every decision you make becomes scrutinized through the lens of you're out to get this guy for political purposes on behalf of Joe Biden. And even if that's not the case, that's what you and I can talk about.
And an indictment is the derivative of the meeting. The indictment happened very shortly thereafter. Can I tell you I didn't hear the call earlier, but some of my very liberal friends who I love, their hair is on fire, George. They are losing it. They really are, because they realize they're losing it. And I had an argument with the gentleman not long ago, and basically he read off his Democratic diatribes to me, and I had to walk away from him because I thought he was going to have a nervous breakdown. I'm not kidding. Because I thought they're losing.
Jay, I appreciate the call as always, man. Thanks for the insights. Jay's line is open at 303-696-1971. Let me do something that I got to do here, and that is to tell you about our friends at Advanced Hair Restoration. It's 2024, and you may be tired of looking in the mirror and thinking you're fighting this losing battle on trying to look young, and it makes you just feel less energetic and makes you feel less confident. Maybe you're just tired of combing it differently or wearing a hat, or maybe you've gone the Geronimo route or my brother's route and just decided to simply shave your head bald. You can do all those things. Don't get me wrong, but there is an alternative, and it's an alternative that's going to make you feel better and look better. And that is to call our friend, Dr. Tanya Pauls and her team at Advanced Hair. They're in the business of using your hair to grow again on your head. And they do it through a simple one-day treatment. It's a calm, relaxed environment, guaranteed outcome, most experienced professionals. There's just nothing else like it in the market, in the metro area here. They've been doing it for so many men. And if you call today, you get $250 off and 250 free hair grafts. Give them a call at 720-459-HAIR, HAIR, 720-459-HAIR. Or you can check them out at advancedhair.com. Hey, stick around. When we come back, we'll get to your calls, your texts. There's a bunch of them rolling in. Keep them coming. It's George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.
Say goodbye to clutter and hello to convenience when you experience organization transformation in your home. Roll 'em Out Shelves, your clutter transformation experts, create affordable Colorado-crafted organized storage solutions. These custom options will maximize and organize your kitchen and bath storage as Roll 'em Out Shelves carefully designs and builds roll-out drawers to fit your space perfectly to clear the clutter. Contact owners Joyce and Brent at Roll 'em Out Shelves to schedule your free in-home estimate today.
George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Back with you here for the second of three segments in this final hour of the Ides of January. That is the 15th of January. Wicked cold out there. It's snowing. 2 degrees the high, the low of negative 1 billion or something like that. Like if you go outside, you will turn into ice. That's some words to that effect. Just be very, very cautious when you're out there. We've had a pretty great conversation today, wide-ranging on the issues of Fani Willis and her alleged romantic relationship with some guy she's appointed to go after Trump as well. And man, is she brave for that. She's so brave. She's so very brave for having taken trips with the special prosecutor vacations and the trips to the White House, the bravery. She oozes bravery in doing that. And oh, by the way, if you say things like that, of course, you are a racist misogynist, because in case you didn't know, she's a black woman. So, of course, they're all above reproach for anything that they do. And then the other part of the conversation was, what do we do with the state GOP here? Are you in support of a state central committee, 400 members strong? I don't know that all 400 members voted or not. I really don't know the answer. But there was a 2/3, 1/3 vote in favor of endorsing President Trump in advance of a primary that required candidates to give tens of thousands of dollars to make it onto the ballot. Is this the right move? We've had a lot of great conversations, a lot of great texts on that topic as well. And I just really appreciate the phone calls. I just think it makes a big difference. Here's one. For the Democrat government to conduct a raid to retrieve documents from a former POTUS is ridiculous. Why? What's the alternative? Honestly, I think that position is questionable at best. They asked him for them. He denied having them. They proved he had them. He refused to provide them. He then misled his own attorneys about which documents he had and where he had them. So his own attorneys would be caught in the lurch, giving incomplete documents to the archivist. What is the recourse? And if your answer is, well, they should just let him keep him, because he put a lock on the bathroom door at the club where they were being housed. And, he has Secret Service who are charged with not protecting any single thing the president has in his place, just himself. That should be good. Is that the right answer? Is that the rule of law? Let a former president dictate which government property he maintains and under what conditions? Come on, Texter. You're better than that. That doesn't make any sense. It's not ridiculous when he engaged in the conduct he did. The part I don't understand is why. And I get the feeling that it's this narcissistic, don't tell me what to do. Do you know what I mean? He's got that feel about him. Don't tell me what I have to do. I am the smartest. I am the bestest. I was the president. These are my things now. It's like, that's not really how the law works. But maybe the law is irrelevant. Here's another texter, Rhino George. Thank you so much for that. You have it backwards. It's not Trump, thus the party of MAGA. It is MAGA, thus the party of Trump. If you love the USA and are an America First conservatives patriot, then there's no other choice that even comes close to Trump. The party of MAGA existed long before Trump. We are the Tea Party. We are the party of Reagan and Lincoln. No, you're not. Please, please, please don't put him in the mouth with the words Reagan and Lincoln. Please don't do that, okay? Whatever great things that President Trump accomplished, please don't liken him to Lincoln, for the love of God. Lincoln saved the Union. Trump thought Lincoln was dumb for not having negotiated a peaceful end to slavery. Please, please. Don't liken Trump to Lincoln. We are the party of Jefferson and Adams. We're the party of the USA. Love it or leave it. Really? Love it or leave it? Is that where we're at now? If you listen, I don't know if you know this. America ain't MAGA. All those MAGA candidates, remember in 2022? Which one of those guys won? I get it. The election was stolen in 20. I understand. The election was stolen in 20, despite the fact that it ushered in the election of Lauren Boebert and a whole host of other Republicans that led to taking back the House. I get it. It was all fixed. But riddle me this. How have you been the party of Lincoln and Reagan and Jefferson and Adams? Call in and have the conversation, man. 303-696-1971. And you can start, as I've asked people to do all along, define for me what makes someone a rhino without referencing Trump. What makes someone a rhino without referencing Trump? Here's one measure. You're a registered Republican. You run for Republican office. You pledge to support whoever the Republican nominee is. And then when you lose, you take your vote and your efforts and you campaign for someone who's not a Republican. That feels pretty rhino-y. But we've seen that. That dude's running for the Republican nomination in CD3. Is that a rhino? My guess is you'd say no, Texter, because you'd say, but he's a Trump guy. And that's the definition of rhino. Are you pro-Trump? Trump is not the Republican Party, right? Dude was a big-time pro-choice abortionist, gave money to big-time pro-abortion candidates. Dude's for tariffs. Dude was for those who continue to throw this around, dude was a red flag guy. For sure. There's clips of that out there. We could find them. But please, please stop with the rhino stuff unless you can come up with a definition of what a rhino is that doesn't involve Donald Trump. 303-696-1971. Here's this. After working and cooperating with the relevant government agencies, this unannounced raid on my home was not necessary or appropriate, Trump said. Come on. They actually retrieved the documents he denied having from his home. What's the cooperation? What was the cooperation? Was it the misleading of his own attorneys, like the moving around of documents without their knowledge? Was it the telling the archivist they don't have them? And then all of a sudden they recover them? Now what? Come on. There was no working and cooperating with relevant government agencies. That's just silliness. Now, listen, there's some other stuff that's going on here up the road. And this is, I guess, in response to, hey, it's MLK Day. What's going on to honor Martin Luther King? Well, after taking a little bit of time off of Twitter and certainly blocking me and a whole bunch of others out there who dared to criticize him, 26-year-old fired teacher, maybe fired's the wrong word, guy wasn't good enough to be retained in the Denver public schools, which is crazy. His name is Tim Hernandez, appointed, not elected, by a handful of people, even though he's sending out flyers that say, re-elect Tim Hernandez. You can't get re-elected if you ain't never been elected. This guy finally shows up to the legislature. And as you know, he's a guy that's flashing the Palestinian flag after having shown up to celebrate with all of the Hamas-loving folks out there in Denver as October the 7th evolved. And there was the rapes and the kidnappings and the beheading of the babies and burning babies and all that other stuff. As he celebrated that, he then takes his Palestinian flag in there. Now he shows up at the Capitol, I think on Friday. He gets some time to talk. Draped over his shoulders, I presume, is a shawl of sorts, a cloth of sorts that is supportive of the Palestinians, including Hamas. And isn't it amazing how it is so hard for two groups to denounce this kind of conduct? One, the pro-Palestinian people simply refuse to denounce Hamas. Can't do it. Refuse to do it. And isn't it so interesting how the Democrats cannot denounce the Hamas celebrating people of their own party, including the Jewish members of our legislature, not Ron Weinberg, of course, on the Democrat side, and members of state leadership like Griswold, Polis, and Weiser, how they simply can't bring themselves to denounce terrorist-loving Timmy Hernandez. Nonetheless, he takes to the podium to discuss Martin Luther King. And there's a couple things that he says. James, can you play clip one for us?
Martin Luther King's politics, oftentimes, while they are lauded today, are important to ground in what they actually showed up as. Martin Luther King Jr. believed, yes, in the right to vote, but he believed in voting power first to get to the eventual place of economic power for all people. What I am saying, and what I think is important to address directly, is Martin Luther King Jr. believed in socialism.
That's Hamas-loving Tim Hernandez. You have to go watch this clip to just simply see how this guy talks. He has a freneticism about him, a wild waving gesture of his hands that you rarely see in public life with somebody talking. And you can hear him in there start to slip into some sort of, I don't know if it's some stereotypical African-American preacher thing, but when he hangs on to the words and he said that kind of thing, you can hear that in that clip. In fact, James, play it one more time.
Martin Luther King's politics, oftentimes, while they are lauded today, are important to ground in what they actually showed up as. Martin Luther King Jr. believed, yes, in the right to vote, but he believed in voting power first to get to the eventual place of economic power for all people. What I am saying, and what I think is important to address directly, is Martin Luther King Jr. believed in socialism.
Now, listen, I do think that it's true that in letters that King wrote to Coretta Scott before he married her in his youth, he indicated he was more socialist in his economic leanings than capitalist. But he said, I also see capitalism as having some positives as well. That's what he said. But it's important why he would invoke that right now. Like, what made Martin Luther King the icon and the historic hero that he is today had nothing to do with socialism. It had everything to do with the core of that speech he gave, the I Have a Dream speech, which is, we're just not going to judge people based on the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And here you have a party that judges itself and others entirely on the color of their skin and their gender and all the other demographic box checking stuff to show up and pronounce that what was great about Martin Luther King was he was a socialist. This guy is casting votes on a daily basis in and out of committees on future laws for the state of Colorado. What? Dude's 26 years old. And if you watch him speak, his arms flailing around, this guy is a wingnut. If you consider the fact that after having danced on the graves of the dead Jews from October the 7th by celebrating Hamas, do you remember his initial statement was one that didn't denounce Hamas at all? It merely, I don't think it clarified anything. But then as the firestorm raged on against him, he was finally forced into making a hostage video where he stood there and said, yes, I denounce Hamas. Hamas is bad. And in fact, it could have been on gunpoint. If I thought the Democrats owned any guns, I would have said it was at gunpoint, but they probably had a slingshot or something painful, or they were threatening to break his vape pen or something to get him to make that kind of a statement. Here's some of the text in here. He talks like a Baptist minister, which seems like that should be cultural appropriation and insulting. But when you're the right party, you can do anything with impunity. Hernandez is another little Mimi. Affirmative action shouldn't even have the job. What I don't get is how this guy got picked. Is this the best that district can do? Is this guy? I don't know. Here's another text. Notice how Hamas Hernandez didn't talk about MLK's views on abortion and same-sex relationships, both of which he was against. True, man. They cherry pick that stuff. And at its core, MLK was definitely an anti-communist, because he was a Christian first. And that's how, in fact, that explains his position on race. His position was, we're all God's children, and God didn't create us unequal based on these demographic things. We are all equal. And what he hated about communism was it robbed us of the thing that made us an individual, that made us men and women. So this idea that that's what we need to celebrate is the fact that he had some socialist economic leanings. Give me a break. And then here's another one. Is he making a speech or is he at a slam poetry night? That's another. I think the scariest issue, these candidates are the best both parties have to offer. Tragic. And that's a reference, of course, to the Trump-Biden thing. I agree with you. Saying only, this is Elon Musk, our friend Alexa sent this on, saying only white people can be racist is obviously a racist definition of racist. That is true, man. That is 100% true. What do we do about Timmy Hernandez? Is he just a one and done? I mean, is this guy's going to, in my opinion, he's going to win the nomination again by the Dems. And if he does, I don't know that anybody's challenging this guy. He will then be elected and will start serving in the legislature starting January of 2025, not as someone filling a vacancy, which we got to reform the hell out of that system. He is exhibit one. But as an elect, it's just hard to imagine he gets to vote on laws. Can you imagine what goes through his head at night? And he's 26. This dude could serve in public service for decades. Oh, anyway. And by the way, what a gutless coward too. I don't know if you remember the video that the dude comes up and confronts him for him celebrating Hamas on October the 7th. And he says, this is your SE little video that only 3 people are going to see, and it ended up going viral. Millions ended up seeing this thing. But more than that, he says it's either that guy or another guy, and I can't remember which. He says, you don't want to mess with me. I'm gangster or something like that. First off, who talks like that? Who says stuff like that? A gangster wouldn't say things like that, but this guy did. And then it was right after that he started blocking people. I think Rob Whitwer, a good longtime conservative, blocked. I was blocked. More and more people. In fact, we should probably start some sort of a tweet thread that I was blocked by terrorist Timmy Hernandez and see how many there are, because gangster there apparently is like, don't mess with me in certain very limited circumstances. But otherwise, I just don't want to hear it from you because it makes me feel bad about me. This guy is going to be worth the admission, the cost of admission. As this session goes on, I imagine we'll have more and more clips of this dude. He is the face of the Democrat Party. There's nothing McCluskey can do about it. He and Epps are the Colorado Democrat Party. They represent what that party stands for today. And I don't know how they're ever going to get away from it. 303-696-1971 is our number. Oh, by the way, Priscilla says that Hamas-loving Timmy Hernandez has 2 other challengers. God, you can only hope that one of them is borderline sane and they end up figuring out a way to pull this off, because that guy is just broken. But I get it, man. The Democrat Party, when you control everything, the crazies in your party start to run amok. It's kind of fun to watch. It's just sad that we're in that position, that they have that kind of a platform. Jim, did you say that? Don't bring him up yet, but did you say James is on the line? Let me do this first. Let me do a quick read. We'll cut away for a break and we'll take James so we don't have to cut him off and we can just have a conversation with him and anyone else calling in at 303-696-1971. You heard in maybe the last break or the break before about QC Kinetics using regenerative medicine to help solve your body's pain woes. So whether it's your knees, your hips, your back, neck, any joint that aches just because of injury, overuse, age, it doesn't matter. You can go under the knife, you can take a whole bunch of pain pills, or you can just suck it up. But now you have a fourth bestest choice, and that is to call our friends at QC Kinetics at 303-900-8986, 303-900-8986. They're in the business of taking a needle. They pull the good parts out of you and put it in the parts that need help. You can find out how they do it at qckinetics.com. QC, those are letters. Kinetics, Kinetix, qckinetics.com. Ask them anything. Get comfortable with the procedure, the successes that they've had border to border, coast to coast, and then do it and change your life for the better. 303-900-8986, 303-900-8986. That's our friends at QC Kinetics. When we come back, James and others, and your text. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Final segment of the show for this really chilly, cold, blowing snow where I am in Douglas County Monday. Before we get to James on the line, I want to remind you that there's something that you need to focus on twice a year. Now, you may do stuff about it twice a day, 3 times a day. I don't know, but it's your teeth. We had Doctors Richter and Snyder in here last week. I love interviewing those folks. I'm sorry things turned out that we couldn't be in the studio at the same time because they're just such a hoot. But Dr. Richter is such a straight man. But Dr. Snyder and Richter have done a couple great things. One is to put together a neighborhood dental practice that really caters to those folks who are looking to be more than just some nameless patient sitting in a chair being processed through every 20 to 30 minutes so that they can get as many billing things done as they get. That's not these folks. These folks treat you like you're part of the community, like you're part of the neighborhood, and they want to see you over and over and over again, and they want to do what's best for you. They have all the ability to do it from not just the state-of-the-art technology that they have available, fantastic staff. Shiloh is always so nice to work with, but also the fact that they've been doing this forever. We got a chance to talk to Dr. Schneider about her brand new little baby, talk a little parenting stuff. And then, of course, both of them, and for those of you that follow current events will appreciate this, have committed to not murdering their spouses and not poisoning their spouses, which is huge. It didn't used to be that you needed to get that kind of a commitment out of a dentist, but it turns out in the 18th Judicial District, that's a thing. I don't know. There's a dentist out there. You know what I'm talking about. They are fun. They are super experienced and completely reasonable in the way that they approach your dental health. You got to focus on it. If your teeth ain't right, the rest of you won't be right either. You got to go check them out at twinaspendentalcenter.com. Office located Stroh Road in Parker. You can call them at 303-841-7466. Set up that appointment today. Take a knee from your current dentist. You can always go back, but I don't think you will. 303-841-7466. James, you're on 710 KNUS. What do you think, James?
Yes, I really disgusted to hear about this Hernandez guy. You know, I'm from the South. I was in part of that Selma and Montgomery March
Wow.
right beside Dr. Martin Luther King. But it's like, you know, I noticed, you know, when people out here talking about, you know, keeping the dream alive, Martin Luther King was more than that. And one of the main things that people are missing that he was for, and he preached, nonviolence. Martin Luther King would be turning over in his grave to see the violence and the killing and the inner citizen thing. But you notice people like that Hernandez guy, he going to say King was a socialist. That tell me he don't know anything about him. I mean, and way people act today, they pretend like it hasn't been any progress. All you hear, you know, is about racism and all this. You know what? I've been seeing racism. I done dealt with it. And what I see today is not racism. I mean, it's really sad what done happened to the country, how divided people are. And when I see all the interracial marriage and couples and things, and I'm saying, man, it's mighty funny how some people know how to go find not the racist peoples and hook up and you hear so much about racism and all these crazy things but we don't hear a lot about violence and, you know, where the violence taking place and who doing it and all that. It's disgusting, you know. I don't know what done happened to the country, you know.
James, can I ask you, how old are you, if you're willing to tell us?
I'm 75 years old.
Now, and this is broader than just the Tim Hernandez hijacking of MLK, but how often do you feel like both sides, either side of any issue out here, they cherry pick things that Martin Luther King Jr. stood for or said as a way to advance their point, but they don't embrace the whole message. They don't embrace the whole man.
Right, because, you know, I guarantee you won't hear anybody giving a speech anywhere in the church and the park or wherever. They won't bring up nonviolence. You know, they don't bring that up. Why?
That is so smart, James, because Tim Hernandez is the guy that won't denounce violence as a political tool. Not even, and you're right. And Martin Luther King was all nonviolence all day long.
And that's one reason why he got a lot of things accomplished, because if he had went out there like they do now, you see people take over place, violence. If the conservative want to have a get together, some here to come, the loony left shows up and break it up or crash it or do whatever, and nothing ever happens. It's truly amazing to me what's going on in the country, and you don't hear. I think about 2020 when all the protests about how George Floyd and all the things that happened just in this state and city of Denver. Not the governor, not the mayor didn't say anything about what happened to the city and all the violence and all. And then all these people, they end up, the protesters, they end up getting paid.
Hey, James, sir, I love the call and I want to continue it, but James just told me, that we're running out of time, and I apologize. Would you please call back in the future and have a memorable MLK Jr. Day?
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, James. Hey, everybody else out there, come back and join us at 6 to 10. We're going to keep this thing going. Great conversations today. It's George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.